they ended up for season 4, that would have been like a mic drop.
Yeah, would have been wildly disappointing.
Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Stokastic MLB Deeper Dive presented by Odd Shopper. Got a nice little 9-game slate tonight, and I'm feeling a little bit of a Coors chalk vibe. Again, it seems like every night almost. Fortunately, we have the perfect guy to help us dissect this and figure out the winning strategies. Adam, show my money share. Adam, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty well. Looking forward to yet another course slate.
I know, yeah. I didn't play last night. It was really weird. I was like refreshing DraftKings on Habit, and there was no current entries. I'm like, what am I doing with my life? But I feel like I need a refresher. Did Coors hit again last night? Because I know 2 nights ago they went and played people a bunch of money.
I actually don't remember. I don't think it. No, it didn't.
Okay. So the Coors Faders won. It's funny, man. It's like putting your money on red or black every night, it feels like. But like in this case, you can get an edge. So we'll explain how to do that. Before we get going in the game-by-game breakdown, guys, give us a like and subscribe. That gives me and Adam that positive feedback that we need to give you the best takes. And also be sure to check out Stokastic.com. We have free tools today, including the MLB top stacks and the PGA ownership projections for the Open. And we also have a very special promo going on. $200 free with BetMGM. You just have to bet $10 on any MLB money line tonight, assuming that you sign up for a new account. Just click the link in the video description for that special promo. All right, let's start the game-by-game breakdown. So we got Cincinnati at New York, Mike Minor versus Severino. Severino, I mean, he's a good pitcher. The matchup is versus the Reds. They seem about average. What are you seeing here?
I think it looks like a good spot for him. He's a good pitcher, but one thing that stands out about him this year is that he has had pretty drastic splits between righties and lefties. I think that as the season goes on, you see those start to converge and not be as massive, but it shouldn't be much of an issue here anyway. You have 6 right-handed hitters in Cincinnati's lineup, including 4 in the top 5. So far this season against righties, Severino has a 34.5% strikeout percentage. He's only allowed a 157 expected ISO and a 257 expected WOBA, both of which are just excellent numbers. Overall, he's got a 27.9% strikeout percentage, 3.38 xFIP, but I think when you're adding in that he's going to get a predominantly right-handed lineup, a lineup that isn't very good, and you're getting it, not in Great American Ballpark, it sets up as a really good spot for Severino at a favorable price point.
Definitely, yeah, and big favorite tonight, minus 300. It is 83 degrees in New York tonight, so there is some heat. But yeah, I think the fact that not too many lefties, that can be a big factor in Yankee Stadium because it plays the left-handed power so much. Now Mike Minor on the other side, tough matchup. Not a great strikeout guy. Are you going to get to him at all?
I wouldn't expect to. Like you said, not a great strikeout guy, and then also just an absolutely brutal matchup on top of it, going up against a bunch of right-handed power bats for the Yankees. So far this year, about an 18.5% strikeout percentage, 18.8% strikeout percentage for Minor, 5.04 xFIP. Relatively small sample for him. He had dealt with some injuries, but even if you go back to last year, the start of last year, 223 expected ISO and only a 20.7% strikeout percentage against righties, sets up as a really, really difficult spot for him here.
Definitely. Now, as far as the stacks, the Reds have a team total of 3.6. So if you go over to the top stacks, which is free today, we can talk some more about those data points to really help you learn how to use that tool. So, oh shoot, is it not free today? I'll have to look at this. I keep putting that is free on my run sheet here. All right. But the Yankees, 5.7 team total, like outside Coors Field, that is one of the higher you're going to see in the MLB. So how do you feel about the stacks today in this game?
I think the Yankees look really good. The one kind of concern I have, I understand why they're getting ownership, but Aaron Judge is at 30%. Giancarlo Stanton's at 25%. It does drop off after that. Higashioka is at 15% just because he's a cheap catcher. Everybody else on the team is sub 10%. So if you look just at the aggregate ownership going to the Yankees, I was gonna say that I think it's kind of interesting that they're relatively close to the Padres, even though the Padres are quite a bit more likely to um, be the top stack. But individually, like when you look at the Padres, and we'll talk about them, when we get there, but they are going to pull ownership basically top to bottom. There's no way to differentiate within a 5-man Padres stack. Whereas with the Yankees, you can play Judge, you can play Stanton, throw in any combination of Donaldson, Torres, Gallo, LeMahieu, Rizzo with those guys, and you're going to have a relatively unpopular lineup that's going to be pretty easy to balance out at other positions. So it does make me still really like the Yankees, just because as a full 5-man stack, you're not going to have to allocate that much ownership to them.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that like they're okay. So ownership 14% on DraftKings, 9% on FanDuel. Sorry guys, the ownership appears to be the free tool of the day, so I had that wrong here. So when it comes to comparing this versus some of the other higher end stacks today, how do you feel the Yankees stack up?
I think they look great. Kind of for the same reason I was just saying, like San Diego is your clear top stack in terms of chances of success. They have a great matchup against cool in Coors Field, but it's still really difficult to 5-man stack them and then have a lineup that is low enough owned that I really want to play it in large field tournaments, because you just can't find any low owned guys in their lineup. They don't exist. Whereas you go to the Yankees, and yeah, they're not quite as in quite as good a spot because they're not in Coors Field, but they're still an extremely good lineup. They're better than the Padres in terms of talent, without a doubt. They have a good enough matchup against Minor, and as a whole, you're just not going to get nearly as much ownership. I mean, like I said, even if you include Judge and Stanton, you can mitigate a lot of that. If you make a Yankee stack where like you only play one of those guys, that's another just very easy way to be relatively contrarian. And then you're mix in a low owned pitcher or a low owned secondary stack, and you just have like no ownership issues really whatsoever with a 5-man Yankee stack. So I do think they just look like one of the best stacks today.
Definitely. And yeah, that's what we're seeing on the tools. The ownership of the Yankees is lower than it would otherwise be, because you got this like alpha stack in San Diego drawing so much ownership. So awesome chance to get a great spot against or with lower ownership than you might see on a different slate. So one of the things that's standing out to me is Kyle Higashioka is batting 8th. And obviously he's at the catcher position, so that is usually pretty hard to fill, but he's like 15% owned for third highest ownership on the Yankees. So do you ever like try to identify a guy that maybe like you fade because like although it's like a decent value and like that's the premium position for sacking, like maybe you get a much lower owned stack going a different direction?
Yeah, it's kind of like you can make a case for it either way, because like you said, it's going to be a lot more difficult to find good catchers. For example, like if you think about the 3 most popular guys on the Yankees, it's going to be a lot more difficult to find good catchers than it is to find good outfielders in place of like Judge or Stanton. But also, you would clearly much rather have Aaron Judge or Giancarlo Stanton in your stack instead of Higashioka. It's worth noting, I guess, that in 119 plate appearances since last year, he does have a 234 ISO against left-handed pitching, 379 expected ISO, but it's not like he's known as a particularly good hitter. And it goes without saying that you're just going to prefer those other, Stanton and Judge over him. That is, I think, typically a pretty easy way to differentiate, just because even though catcher is a weak position, you can kind of just throw other guys in there that are similarly skilled to Higashioka.
Definitely. And I think you're not like necessarily giving up any sort of advantage, because like if if the Yankees stack goes off and you have 5 guys and Higashioka is not one of them, like you're not feeling much FOMO in that. Congrats to Gilbert in chat. He said he just took them the $4.20 max in the early slate, 2.4K. That's pretty slick. Adam, did you play that one?
For electronics, yeah. I think I played. I obviously didn't win. Congrats.
Nice. Yeah. Congrats to Gilbert.
Yeah, I got 5th in the big $15, but that did not pay 2,400 either. So, or actually, no, maybe I think he paid like 2K. So yeah, he still wins.
Nice, man. 5th is pretty solid. Hopefully we can keep that momentum going tonight. All right, let's move on to the next game here. We got Philadelphia, Toronto. We got Stripling versus Wheeler. Wheeler, he's priced at 9,700 on DraftKings, 10.6K on FanDuel, but it's looking like because of the matchup, he's not projecting great for the salary versus the Blue Jays. What do you do in these situations?
Yeah, I think the ownership's more or less where it should be. Like we have him going a little bit under owned in the top pitchers tool, 15%, top 2 percentage, 10% ownership percentage. But pitchers like this, when there are just so many pitchers in this price range, like there's so many good pitchers on this slate that just look a little bit better than Wheeler because of mostly the matchup and then to some extent the salary. It's more so he's somebody where, you can use him if you do need to offset some Padres ownership or some Yankees ownership or something like that, but he's not going to project quite as well as some of these other guys. He is a really good pitcher though. So getting him at 10% owned does have some appeal. 27% strikeout percentage, 3.06 xFIP this year. He's really good. The issue is just that the Blue Jays also have a very dangerous lineup. And when you look at the other pitching options on the slate, Severino's less expensive in a better matchup. McClanahan's only a little bit more expensive, but he's got much better strikeout numbers. Otani's got a really difficult matchup, but much better strikeout numbers. John Gray's at a different price point. Christian Javier's got a better matchup. So it just becomes really difficult to prioritize Wheeler outside of saying, like in individual lineups, this is one way that I can be contrarian without sacrificing a ceiling.
Definitely. It looks like the Blue Jays lineup today is not good for striking guys out. Obviously, they got a lot of good power. The one positive factor that could work in the Wheelers' favor is it's only 67 degrees in Toronto tonight. I assume they might have the roof closed if the weather isn't great. So either way, if it's open or closed, that's going to be good pitching conditions. But like the price doesn't account for this matchup at all. So Wheeler is not someone that's making it to the top of my list here. Stripling on the other side. Philadelphia has also got a lot of power in their lineup today. Yeah, Stripling 20% strikeout rate so far this year. Not a guy that goes super deep in games. He's kind of a value option, but only 2% projected owned today. Any interest there?
Not really. Like you said, I think that he's a value option in that 6,500 is pretty cheap. 94 pitches last time out, at least 80 pitches in 5 straight games now. So that's good at least, and he's a decent pitcher. But for one, I don't think you're really going to need to pay down at pitcher all that much today because, well, for 2 reasons. For one, there's plenty of value bats. And for 2, the opportunity cost of pitcher is pretty high. Like there's so many very high upside pitchers today that it's kind of hard to think that you're going to get by with like, oh, I got 12, 13 points from a $6,500 pitcher. That's a good value because, not only are you probably going to give up a lot in terms of raw points to some combination of these top end pitchers, but there's so many value bats that it's pretty unlikely that the most expensive bats actually end up being the best, at least across the board. So that makes it pretty difficult, I think, to prioritize him on top of the fact that it's not a great matchup either.
Yeah, totally. Like in isolation, he looks like a fine play, but it sounds like the slate just doesn't set up for punting at pitcher. Now, as far as stacks, as I mentioned, the weather conditions aren't going to be favorable in this one, but yeah, and then the matchup for the Blue Jays is really tough, so they're looking super contrarian tonight. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, I think that Toronto is Kansas City's like entire roster was just ruled out for their trip to Toronto. So that's going to be interesting when that happens. But
Yeah,
for the Blue Jays, I do think that they're kind of interesting in tournaments just because you have so much ownership today going to the Padres and then to the Yankees that I don't think it's a bad idea to just, especially, if you're playing 150 lineups in particular in large field tournaments, to kind of just be taking shots at good offenses that are low owned. Obviously, I have a lot of respect for Zach Wheeler. I don't think it's very likely that the Blue Jays come through, but they just have so much power in this lineup that when they do, they certainly can just win you a tournament relatively easily. And they're only getting 1% aggregate ownership. Kind of similar on the other side for Philadelphia, except they are pulling some ownership. It's a better spot against Stripling. He's not bad, but he's certainly not the same level as Zach Wheeler. But you have Kyle Schwarber in a good spot. You have Derek Hall in a good spot. Hoskins and Castellanos are both good. The issue with Philadelphia, though, is that they do get cheap after Derek Hall, but they also start to get very not good at hitting baseballs after you get past those 4 guys.
definitely. I mean, Kyle Schwarber is definitely a name that people are going to be looking at. It seems like he homers every game these days. 300 ISO. Like it looks like the top of the order for Philadelphia is like really good, like you were saying. but the rest of the lineup makes it very difficult to stack the team. Although there are some 2K guys like Matt Vierling and Yairo Munoz. So any stacks you think you're gonna have a Philly?
Probably not a lot, especially because they are getting the ownership. Looking at Stripling so far this year, he's done a good job limiting power. Again, not the biggest sample size, but 202 expected ISO to righties, 145 to lefties. Since the start of last year, 185 to lefties, 208 to righties. So I think it's really just kind of those top four guys. And then if you throw in a Bryson Stott hitting fifth or a Matt Vierling hitting sixth, the value is there. I just think the ownership's there too.
That's true. Yeah, the ownership is surprisingly high. They are like kind of popping up on our top stacks tools, the sixth highest stack. So that's a little bit surprising to me, given their team total is only 4.3. But I think that means we're not going to have a lot of great options at stacks today, and maybe they're not one of the weaker ones. So let's keep them in the back of our head here as an option. All right, let me. Anything else with this game?
Nope.
All right. So, guys, our job at Stokastic, we're here to help you guys win money and make some killer lineups. So, maximizing the data and the sports expertise, that's really that deadly combo that the guys on our Stokastic team use to win the big bucks. And you can get access to all the data on the site, like top stacks, projections, ownership, and then make sure to stop by our premium Discord so you can connect with all the other like avid DFS players. And if you're not already on the premium subscription, we have a deal going 50% off your first week of Stokastic Plus. What you should do, check the link in the video description or go to the site and enter the code MLBDD for MLB Deeper Dive. 50% off your first week of any weekly package, whether it's the full site pass like Platinum or just MLB. And a nice little thing, you're going to be throwing Adam and myself a bone because if we don't get enough signups, we might not have jobs tomorrow, and then we won't be able to give you the picks. So, guys, performance enhancing data, MLBDD on Stokastic.com. All right, next game we got Boston at Tampa. So any game in Tampa, that's like great pitching conditions, and you got Shane McClanahan, and he's looking like a killer option as far as projection tonight. What are you seeing?
Yeah, he looks great here. I mean, he's pulling the most pitcher ownership at 45%, but he's also been the best pitcher on the slate this season. He leads the slate in strikeout percentage at 36%. Walk percentage is 4.8%, which is, I believe, the lowest, or it's very close to the lowest. 1.98 xFIP is the lowest. The matchup against Boston isn't great, but it is a good park. And one thing about Boston too is like, even though as a whole their lineup is going to project, like it has a good WRC plus and a lot of power, a lot of that is just being skewed by Rafael Devers and JD Martinez in particular. Xander Bogaerts we know is good as well. But like you get to the bottom of this order, Bobby Dahlbeck has some power, but he's not somebody you should be that concerned about. Jeter Downs should be a free out for McClanahan. Jackie Bradley Jr. should be a free out for McClanahan. Obviously, I'm sure I just talked this team into hitting like 5 home runs in the bottom of their order. But my point being, like, you get some lineups, like Toronto or like the Yankees where, Joey Gallo is batting ninth, and it's just like, this is ridiculous. Here you have guys that aren't really very good at the bottom of the order. So that sets up well for McClanahan in a good pitcher's park as well. He's getting the most ownership, but I think he deserves it. On FanDuel, he's getting 14% ownership, which is much more reasonable because he is more expensive. He's $1,000 more than Ohtani. He's $900 more than Wheeler. But I think on FanDuel, that still just gives you the opportunity to get the best pitcher on the slate at modest ownership, because I don't think you're going to have much trouble finding value bats today.
Definitely. I think McClanahan, like, I'm surprised that there's so many lefties in the lineup, to be honest. That should set up really well for an excellent pitcher. 36% strikeout rate this year so far. So he looks like a top option to me as far as projection. Shoot, I have my cheat sheet up here. Like 24 points or 23 points at 10K. That's one of the best values you're going to find in MLB DFS these days. So it looks really solid. Josh Winkowski on the other side. Any interest in him?
Kind of just can repeat everything I said about Stripling, I think. Winkowski is just kind of a mediocre pitcher. It's a good park. There are strikeouts to be had in Tampa Bay's lineup. We know that it's a little bit watered down right now, but I just don't think I'm going to need to get to Josh Winkowski all that often because I don't think I'm going to need the savings and because the opportunity cost to pitcher is really high today.
Nice. Yeah, I don't see it either. All right, as far as stacks, obviously Tampa not a great park because it's all indoors, but Josh Winkowski, as you mentioned, not a great pitcher. So how do you feel about Tampa stack?
Mediocre. The park isn't very good. Tampa's offense isn't very good. If you're looking at what Winkowski has struggled with during a limited sample so far, 196 expected ISO to lefties, so maybe you would single out left-handed power, but I don't really know where that is. You have G-Man Choi hitting second at 3,500. That's at first base though, so a premium position there. Jonathan Aranda's 2K flat at second base hitting fifth. That's an okay value bat, but it's just really hard for me to look at Tampa Bay in this park and really want to get there.
Agreed. We got a question in the chat from Orandi Fourth. He says we're playing Severino on FanDuel, right? So for context, Severino is only 9,300 on FanDuel, 18% ownership. How does that stack up to, like, for instance, McClanahan, who's 11.5K on FanDuel, where there's a significant price difference?
I think it's kind of comparable. Like I would think that I get the Severino more because he's $2,200 less, and I'm not going to go out of my way to just like blow up a lineup to get to McClanahan against Boston instead of Severino against Cincinnati. But if I'm stacking cheaper teams, I do think getting to that little bit of lower ownership on McClanahan makes sense.
Definitely, yeah. I'm surprised how low owned he is on FanDuel.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that Severino's ownership on FanDuel at 9,300 is as close as it is to Ohtani at 10.5, given that Ohtani's 1,200 more and he's facing Houston. I kind of thought you would get a little bit bigger gap there.
Yeah, of course we'll get to Ohtani in a little bit here, but I'm kind of surprised that McClanahan is kind of low on FanDuel because he is in such a good spot. But like we always talk about how it's the stacks that win you the money in MLB DFS, and I always put the pitchers in last when I'm hand building a lineup. And 11.5K, like you got to go to some rather low end stacks or like bad players and good teams to get to that. So I guess I can see how the lineup construction doesn't really lead you that way today. All right, let's move on to we got super chat, my filler arc. Thank you for the super chat. For your transition into Odd Shopper, what are 3 picks from you guys for the MLB PrizePicks power play today? Oh man, that is a good question. I haven't gotten on PrizePicks today, so usually what I'll do PrizePicks, we don't have a MLB PrizePicks tool at the moment, but we do have the MLB betting tool, so the player props tool. So like usually the lines are somewhat comparable to PrizePicks. So I'm just looking at some top options on that tool. Zach Wheeler over versus Toronto. Scary lineup, but I can see why like people would be a little bit afraid of the over, but our model has that as a good play. Mike Minor over. Are there any props today that you're looking at?
Not that I had looked at. No, I mean I had the Odd Chopper page in front for like Guerrero to hit a home run, but I don't know how that applies to PrizePicks.
Yeah, for PrizePicks, it's really interesting because they like pair up 3 different players, and you have to bet on the total home runs for like this combination, or sometimes it's 4. So like, let me see. Toronto, Guerrero plus Springer plus Chapman plus Hernandez over under half a home run. So there's some interesting strategy there. I'm sure like everyone bets the overs on these, but yeah, I have to admit, if you're combining 4 players, like you can get all of our home run odds on the props tool, so you could actually like map this out. But it seems like if you add up 5 players, the odds of one of them hitting a home run is pretty decent. But I don't want to say too much without doing the research here. All right, let's move on to the next game. We got the White Sox at Cleveland. And on the mound, we got Giolito and Savale. Neither one is really standing out in ownership. And then the temperature today in Cleveland, 76 degrees. So pretty neutral conditions. How are you feeling about Savale and Giolito?
I think if you have to go cheap, Savali is underpriced. He's just kind of a middle of the road pitcher, 4.09 xFIP, 21.7% strikeout percentage, mediocre matchup against the White Sox. But I don't think you're going to need to go that cheap that often. Giolito is the one that really interests me in tournaments because he has a tough matchup against Cleveland. We know that they're tough to strike out. And John Gray clearly in this price range has the better matchup against Oakland. But we also have Gray projected for 33% ownership, Giolito at 4% right now. There's no way that you should be giving up like 10 times the ownership to John Gray just because the matchup's a little better. Like Gray's a good pitcher, but so is Giolito. Giolito's got a higher strikeout percentage. Walk percentage is slightly higher for Giolito. xFIP is slightly higher for Giolito. But these are very, very comparable pitchers in terms of talent and stuff. The only real difference is that Giolito is facing Cleveland and Gray is facing Oakland. I'm not saying that I don't like Gray. Obviously, we'll talk about him when we get there, but I don't think there should be anywhere close to a 10x difference between them in terms of projected ownership.
Great. Yeah, I feel like Giolito, like the projection of 16 versus 7,900 salary is quite strong. So I'll be surprised if I don't end up putting Giolito in a few lineups today. And then the matchup versus Cleveland, they do strike out slightly less than average, but as far as like projected stats, like just around average at getting on base, just around average at like isolated power. So this is maybe like a very slightly negative matchup, but Giolito's strikeout rate of 27%, xFIP 3.6. Those are strong numbers. So I think he's a strong option today as well. Now, Savale, like he's looking super cheap at 5,400, and he's getting some ownership by people just punting at pitcher. So do you feel like that's a decent option today?
I think that if you need a cheap pitcher, that's where I'd go. Like he's $1,100 less than Stripling and Winkowski. To me, they're kind of just all comparable. So typically, I would just go to the cheapest one and try and upgrade somewhere. But again, I just don't really think you're going to need to go that cheap all that often.
Agreed. But there are some. I mean, if you go like Yankees, Padres, like I don't recommend doing this because everyone doing that will have like that punt pitcher. But like that would be perhaps a strong projection lineup.
One other thing I want to mention about Cleveland with regard to Giolito is like this team is still difficult to strike out, but keep in mind that those strikeout numbers are also pulled down by Steven Kwan and Jose Ramirez. Looking at this particular lineup, you do have Austin Hedges in there, who's like a 30% strikeout guy. Nolan Jones should be a good hitter, but he's projected to be about a 25% strikeout guy as well. So still a tough strikeout matchup because you do have Kwan, Ramirez, Naylor at the top of the order, but there are some strikeouts to be had once you get past those guys in this particular lineup.
Definitely. Yeah, it's not a bad matchup for Giolito. So I think that maybe people are undervaluing him today a little bit. So definitely a guy to be looking at. As far as stacks, the weather conditions are about average today. So we're seeing like pretty mediocre marks on the top stacks tool. Just all right. So Cleveland is right in the middle of the pack, and White Sox are just below them. So neither team. Oh wait, maybe I got this backwards. But anyway, yeah, White Sox are slightly above Cleveland now. But how are you handling these teams?
The White Sox look pretty good to me here right now, only getting about 4% aggregate ownership. We have them with a 6% chance of being the top stack on that's on FanDuel. Forgot to refresh that from earlier, but on DraftKings we have them similar 6% chance of being the top stack, 3% aggregate ownership. Savali's not bad, like I said, but he does have some power issues. 212 expected ISO to lefties and 204 to righties. The White Sox lineup really hasn't been very good, but all of these guys have pedigree and all of them have a lot of talent. So I have a hard time just completely writing off what they've done in the past. They're not super cheap either when you have Tim Anderson, Luis Robert, and Jose Abreu all over 5K. But Moncada's sitting second at 3,100. Jimenez is only 3,700. Pollock's seventh at 3,300. There are ways you can make this White Sox stack and still save some money. So I do like getting to the White Sox. I think it's a little bit more difficult for me to get to the Cleveland side against Giolito. They are getting actually more ownership right now than the White Sox and have a lower chance of being the top stack. I would guess that a lot of the aggregate ownership is just because of Jose Ramirez, though, who is always a good play.
Definitely. Guys, we got some bombshell news here. The Bears have waived long snapper Antonio Ortiz to make room for wide receiver N'Keal Harry, former first-round pick.
That is not the wide receiver I was expecting you to say was going to the Bears.
Yeah, this is big. All right. As far as individual hitters on these teams, it sounds like the White Sox stack is pretty interesting. It's got some good leverage marks in our tool and is fifth highest in top stack percentage. However, the top value percentage is very low. And some of these guys, you're not getting great values on them. So like, how do you usually reconcile those two things? The value being bad versus top stack percentage being high.
Yeah, so I mean, one thing with this team is that it's not like the entire lineup is expensive. So, like for example, if you don't play Tim Anderson and you go Moncada, Jimenez, Pollock, Abreu, Robert, you're only paying up for two guys. So like that's going to be pretty easy. I don't think it's going to be that difficult to get here. And then on top of that, even if you go with two of the good pitchers today, you're talking about spending $18,000 to $19,000 a pitcher. It's not like you're spending that much money there. You're going to have plenty of cheap one-offs you can get to as well. So I don't think it should be that difficult to get to them here. And then one other thing to mention is just looking at the White Sox numbers against right-handed pitching this year, across the board, it just kind of seems like they've hit into bad luck. Tim Anderson's expected ISO against right-handed pitching is like 80 points higher than his actual. Moncada's is like 60 points higher. Roberts is 60 points higher. Abreu is 100 points higher. Really just across the board, it seems like these guys have hit into some bad luck.
Yeah, definitely. All right, guys. So Odd Shopper is our sports betting tool on the site. So make sure to check that out. Our goal, like, not only is to get you bets that are gonna, return more than you put in, but make that really easy. And also, one of the really fun tools on the site is a parlay builder, where you kind of pick the sports book that you want to bet on, and then it will choose bets for you based on some criteria that you put in to maximize the risk reward ratio of your parlay. So a lot of fun. We also got the arbitrage tool, where if you can get both sides of these opportunities as they come up, you can get free money. And my favorite bets are the strikeout props. We've been putting in a lot of work researching these to make sure they're as accurate as possible. So we got that plus the Discord picks package, where we're giving you our favorite bets of the day. So if you love sports betting, make sure to check that out. All right, we got Dodgers at St. Louis. So Gonsolin at versus Wainwright. Gonsolin has been like killing it this year, but it looks like it's mostly luck. He has a 1.6 ERA versus a 3.8 xFIP. I saw some comparisons being made because there was like an all-star snub. I'm not someone that follows it super close, but like Gonsolin got in the all-star, but Alcantara didn't or something.
I think it was for who was going to start.
Oh, who's starting? Okay. Yeah. So what's your take on Gonsolin? Do you think that he's been getting lucky, or does he actually have the goods?
So I think he's good. I don't think he's anywhere nearly as good as he's been this season, for the reasons you were just saying. 3.8 xFIP, 1.62 ERA, 183 BABIP. That's just unbelievably low. 90.8% left on base percentage, ridiculously high. Just he's good, but I don't think he's anywhere near as good as he has been. And from a DFS standpoint, it's also difficult to get to him on a slate like this, because not only does he have a tough matchup against the Cardinals, but a 24% strikeout percentage at the same price tier, where you have Zach Wheeler and Severino and Javier and Ohtani and McClanahan, and more expensive than John Gray and Giolito. It just becomes so difficult to land on a pitcher that, for one, doesn't project quite as well because he has been lucky so far this year. For two, even in the midst of a really good season, isn't striking guys out at that same rate. And then for three, has a tough matchup against the Cards.
Let me add a fourth point. It's 90 degrees in St. Louis today. So this is like very strong hitting conditions. So Gonsolin really is showing up as a bad option today because of all those factors that you mentioned. Wainwright on the other side also looks to be kind of below par option at pitcher. Any interest in Wainwright?
Nope, really tough matchup. And he's been good this year in terms of just pitching, 3.77 xFIP, but 19.5% strikeout percentage facing the Dodgers in favorable hitting weather. I'm good not getting there.
Definitely. Now, as far as stacks, the Dodgers are in contention every day. Today, they have a team total of 4.7, which finding team standards would be high, but for them, maybe a little bit low. How are you feeling about the Dodgers today?
I like them quite a bit in tournaments. We have them third highest in the top stack tool, but getting like 1/3 of the aggregate ownership of the Yankees and like 1/6 of the Padres. They're not as good a value, obviously, as the Padres, but not even as the Yankees. But again, I just don't think it's gonna be that difficult to get the hitters that you want today. And the Dodgers are another team where, Betts, Turner, Freeman are relatively expensive. The next most expensive guy in the lineup is Will Smith at 4,600. Justin Turner is only 4K. Bellinger's 3,600. Muncy's 4,100. So overall, I don't think they're that expensive or that difficult to get to here. Favorable hitting weather, really, really talented offense. Another, I'd kind of mentioned it with the Blue Jays, where I don't hate getting to talented offenses on a slate where everybody's going to be playing an average offense like the Padres. The Dodgers have a better matchup than the Blue Jays do. Wainwright not as good as Wheeler, and they just have so many good hitters in this lineup that I do like getting to them in tournaments as long as the ownership holds where it is.
Definitely agreed. Yeah, I think that the talent's there, the weather's there. Matchup versus Wainwright, just slightly better than league average this year, 3.8 xFIP. So I see this as a stack that may go under the radar a little bit today. As far as individual players on the Dodgers, is there anyone you're keen to?
Not really, just because it's so difficult to differentiate these guys. They're all so good. Like clearly Betts, Turner, Freeman at the top, but they're also the most expensive. I do like that Bellinger got moved up to sixth at 3,600. That looks pretty good. Will Smith at 4,600 looks like a good catcher option. But looking at Wainwright's numbers so far, 219 expected ISO to righties, 172 to lefties, a little bit lower strikeout percentage to lefties. I don't think that there's any reason to be heavily favoring one side or the other. It's more just these guys can all hit and they're all in a decent spot.
Nice. Any interest in the Cardinals on the other side?
Tournaments, sure, just because they are a good offense, and we do think Gonsolin's due for some regression here, but not as high upside an offense as the Dodgers, not as good a spot, or probably not as good a spot as the Dodgers. One thing that stands out with Gonsolin so far this year is that, so against lefties, he has a lot of 126 ISO, only a 111 expected ISO with a 25% strikeout percentage. Against righties, he's actually only struck out 22.5% of hitters, so that's a little bit lower than against lefties. 137 actual ISO, 214 expected ISO. Just seems like for whatever reason, I don't know what that would be. Maybe it's just hanging sliders more often because that's a pitch that he throws more to righties. But he's actually run pretty lucky against them in particular. So certainly doesn't hurt Goldschmidt or Arenado, but I also wouldn't use that as a reason not to be going to a cheap Edman, Carlson, Gorman if you're stacking. So I think it's a high upside spot for both sides. I do think the spot for the Dodgers is better though.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree. Anytime there's a team that's decent in good weather conditions, like you gotta be interested. But this is definitely you're definitely going all or nothing with the Cardinal stack. All right. We got Oakland at Texas. So we got Paul Blackburn versus John Gray. Paul Blackburn 6,100, John Gray 7,700. Now I'm thinking the roof is close today in Texas, so John Gray is really popping in value. It's 100 degrees there, so the conditions should be pretty good with the roof closed for pitchers. Now, the matchup for Oakland also is very strong. They just don't have much power or hitting capabilities. So, what are you doing today with Gray?
I'm gonna play a lot of him. It's just a situation where like he projects better. He projects the best in this mid range. I think he's cash viable as well. Just pretty clearly underpriced. He's a good pitcher. He has a 26.5% strikeout percentage, 3.37 xFIP. This isn't a case of the field just bumping up ownership on some random pitcher against Oakland. This is a legitimately good pitcher that's underpriced. So I'm going to get to a lot of him. I don't really have any doubts about that. I'd mentioned his ownership relative to Giolito earlier, that I thought that gap was a little big. He does certainly project better than Giolito, but I do think that they're close enough in projection where if you are going to a more popular team like the Yankees, like the Padres, you certainly can make that pivot, but I still expect that I get more John Gray than Giolito given the matchups.
Nice. Now, Paul Blackburn, been surprising some people this year. Only 3.6 xFIP for a guy that I know some of you guys out there remember that Chris Baggs nicknamed a award after this guy for just the random pitcher of the night that will go off. So it begs the question: is Paul Blackburn the Paul Blackburn pitcher of the night tonight?
Pretty hard to make a case for him, I think. He's cheap, and he has been good in terms of run prevention this year. You mentioned the 3.6 xFIP, but still doesn't strike out a lot of guys, only a 19.4% strikeout percentage. Texas has a decent lineup, although they did replace Adolis Garcia with Charlie Culberson tonight, so that makes things look a little bit better for Blackburn. But other than that, their lineup is more or less intact and not particularly appealing to go up against. They do have a lot of left-handed power in this lineup. He's allowed a 192 actual ISO, 159 expected ISO to lefties this year. He's not a pitcher that I love targeting against because he does typically do a good job of limiting power and keeping the ball on the ground, but also not a pitcher that I'm going out of my way to get to in DFS.
Nice. Agreed. Now, as far as stacks, indoor games, so that's definitely knock against some. And then the team totals aren't very high in this one, even though Paul Blackburn, pretty average pitcher in my opinion, but the results this year may contradict that. So, are you stacking either of these teams up?
Probably not too much. I think that the ownership is about where it should be on both teams. I mean, Oakland, it goes without saying, it's a bad spot, and they're really bad. Texas is a team that I do get to pretty frequently, but here you have them getting 4% ownership, 4% chance of being the top stack. Just the way things look right now, it's hard for me to want to get to them over a team like the Dodgers at similar ownership, or the White Sox at lower ownership, or we haven't talked about the Orioles yet, but they have a similar top stack percentage at lower ownership. Toronto has a similar top stack percentage at lower ownership. So right now it just kind of seems like Texas is getting what they should, whereas there's a lot of other teams with similar chances of success that aren't getting as much.
Definitely. Baltimore at Chicago. We got Spencer Watkins versus Justin Stewart. Team total, or the over-under of this game, only 8 and temperature 70. So no Wrigley win game tonight. It looks like probably slightly favorable conditions for pitchers, but the pitchers tonight just aren't really that exciting with Justin Steele and Spencer Watkins. Steele's price is like perplexing on DraftKings at 9,200, but on FanDuel at 7,600. He actually looks like he might be a decent punt play. What do you see there?
Yeah, I think he's an okay pitcher. The price tag, like you said on DraftKings, just I think is pretty close to impossible for me to get to today. 22.7% strikeout percentage is good. 3.72 xFIP is good. 10% or almost 11% walk percentage is not good, but that's kind of the only issue that he's had. He's been very good at limiting power this year as well. 111 expected ISO to righties, sub 100 to lefties, striking out 32% of lefties, only 20% of righties. You are going to get a right-handed heavy lineup from Baltimore. The only lefty in it is Cedric Mullins, so that should dampen his strikeout projection a bit as well. But really, it's just tough to get to him in DFS because the price tag on the two pitcher site is expensive, and on FanDuel, like he's more reasonably priced, but you're going to play him over all of these other top end pitchers.
Agreed. Yeah. I guess on FanDuel, there must be something to it because he's at 10% in our ownership projections. So if you can find some sick bats to stack up and then you end up with 7,600 left, I would click that. But on DraftKings, 9,200 is just way too much for what looks like average pitcher and pretty much in strikeouts and in xFIP. So actually like 3.7 xFIP for Steele is pretty good, but still 9,200 does a lot. Watkins on the other side, This guy, he just doesn't strike guys out. He only has a 12% strikeout rate this thus far. So I'm crossing him off. What about the sacks here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the stacks are interesting. The weather, you mentioned it at the top. The weather's not very appealing. Wind blowing in a bit, only like 70 degrees. That's why you see like a 4.3, 4.4 implied run total for the Cubs and sub 4 for the Orioles. But this is also just a slate where you don't have, outside of the Yankees and outside of the Padres, you don't have a lot of stacks that you're just looking at it and saying like, there's nothing, there's no question marks here, there's no red flags. So I still don't mind getting to these teams. I mean, for the Cubs, they're facing certainly one of the weakest pitchers on the slate in Spencer Watkins. They are also getting some ownership, similar to, or I guess a little bit more than the Phillies, but a little bit higher than their top stack percentage as well. But it is a good spot for them. You have Ortega leading off again. That's a good value. Ian Happ looks very good hitting third. Suzuki, Horner, these guys are fine. So I don't mind getting to the Cubs, but I think the ownership is there. On the other side, it's not as good a matchup for the Orioles. You know, I mentioned that Steele's been very good at limiting power this year. Doesn't have the same strikeout numbers against righties, but he still hasn't given up power there. But the Orioles are cheap, and they do have power here. You know, if you kind of ignore Cedric Mullins at the top, not saying that you can't play any, but just for the sake of what I'm about to say, Mancini, Mountcastle, Santander, Hayes, Rutschman, Urias, Odor, Mateo, the most expensive out of those guys is Hayes at 4K. And Mancini, Mountcastle, Santander, Hayes, Rutschman all have plenty of power. Urias has some power. Mateo will steal like any chance he gets if he happens to get on base. So it's just a high upside lineup that's not getting really any ownership. Right now, 2% projected ownership compared to a 4.5% chance of being the top stack. It just strikes me as a slate where I'm probably going to be spreading out my hitter stacks because there's not many spots that are particularly likely to come through, but there are a lot of spots where you're just seeing less ownership go to a team than probably should, and Baltimore is one of those teams.
Yeah, I mean, they're super low owned, only 4.1 team total, but it's over 4. That's usually my threshold for considering stacking a team. So I can see what you're saying. They're super contrarian and they got some decent talent. I just can't help but think you're a little bit of a homer on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty high on Baltimore all season. They have won me 100K already though, so
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I saw that you were tweeting that they won their ninth in a row the other day.
yeah,
Or
they won their ninth in a row yesterday, so they're back to 500 now.
it's pretty impressive. All right. I don't know about you guys, but I like 2 million bucks. That's why I'm playing best ball on underdog this year. But in addition to the Best Ball Mania 3, where you got that $2 million first, they got the Puppy 2 that they just launched. That's their lower stakes one, and these things fill up super quick. So I think I heard they launched it like maybe less than a week ago. It's already 50% full. So we have a special promo to get you our best ball package for $1 for the first week. And that's using the promo code puppy. So we got our consensus rankings. We got, all of our DFS models that we would apply the best ball. Plus we built like a lot of simulations for the season long performance so that we can really model how good is this player for best ball where you don't get waiver picks versus redraft. So there's a lot going in on the back end to make sure that you're going to make some really awesome lineups for best ball. So make sure you use that promo code puppy for the best ball weekly package. Get that for $1, and then draft some of these on underdog. A lot of fun. So maybe I'll see you guys in some drafts. All right, San Diego at Colorado. We got 10.5 over under here. San Diego once again the highest projected stack of the day with a 6.5 team total. It seems like in 2022 that's one of the higher ones you're going to get. And obviously like a pretty talented team. They do have some really cheap guys in the lineup too today that make them very stackable. What are you seeing here?
It's clearly the top stack again in terms of chances of success, in terms of value. If you find somebody that'll play you in cash and not go to the Padres, play them as much as you can going forward. In tournaments, I still think they're a good team to get to. You just have to be aware of what the rest of your lineup looks like. I do think they look a little bit better on this particular slate than they did yesterday, for example, because for one, the slate is smaller with only 9 games instead of, I think it was 14. But also, kind of like we were just saying with the Orioles, so many teams on this slate either are bad offensively, are in tough hitting weather, and or have a tough matchup there's not that many teams that you can go to other than the Padres where you feel confident at all. So I think it just makes them relatively look a little bit better as well. But you still, just need to pay attention to the ownership in your lineups. I think this is probably a slate where I get to a lot of Padres, but where there's also a good chance it ends up being like 2-mans, 3-mans, one-offs, more so than me jamming in 5 guys that are all projected for 20 something percent ownership.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking maybe I'll have some of those 5 guy stacks that you're talking about, but you definitely gotta go for a contrarian rest of your lineup. Like
Yeah.
Baltimore, you mentioned was a great contrarian stack to maybe mix up with the Padres in the
Yeah.
same lineup.
Yeah, like there's no reason you can't go Padres plus Orioles plus Giolito.
The weather in Denver today is 90 degrees, so that takes Coors Field from being like the best pitching park to the best pitching park of the year. So I think the conditions are great in this one. Now you got Nomar Mazara batting cleanup for 2,100 and Eric Hosmer at 2K batting fifth. Like what the heck? I mean,
Yeah.
this is so absurd. I just don't even know. Like I guess that's like you can stack up San Diego and get the best pitchers as
Right.
well. So how does this fit into the whole slate? Is like how do what's the context of this with regards to the whole slate?
Well, it's kind of what I've been referring to when I say like I don't think there's going to be a huge need to get to guys like Savali or Stripling or anything, because like the issue with the pricing is it's one thing to say the Padres are in the best spot and I'm going to take my chances going to a different team. It's another thing to say I'm going to go to a different team that's in a worse spot, and then I'm also going to play worse pitchers, and then I'm also going to play worse one-offs because at this pricing you can just make whatever teams you want with the Padres. So that's where it gets kind of difficult, and it makes like I don't mind slates like this for tournaments just because you do get so much concentrated ownership on one team, but it does make it really difficult, typically, because this is very clearly the best value team and the best offense. So I think it just really opens it so you can do whatever you want. I would say if you're somebody that typically uses a salary floor when you build in Fantasy Cruncher or whatever it is you use, I would either lower that floor or just not bother with it today, because you definitely don't want to just be restricting yourself for no reason because the pricing is so bad.
That's a good point. Now, damn, like it's hard to know what to do here because these prices are just so ridiculous. But um, I find it hard not to recommend Padres because they are probably in one of the best spots of the year. Although Chad Cool, not a horrible pitcher, like he's a little bit worse than average according to his xFIP, but on the other side, Joe Musgrove makes this a little bit tougher to know what to do with the Rockies because he is a solid pitcher. I'm not playing him, but how does Musgrove affect how you're handling the Rockies today?
I still like getting to the Rockies in tournaments just because, like they're pulling 9% ownership, so we have them as the third highest owned stack on the third highest owned team on the slate, fourth highest top stack percentage. But it is still Coors Field. They are still reasonably priced. They have a 6% chance of being the top value stack, which is in line with the next highest owned teams behind, or next highest probability teams behind the Padres. And looking individually at their ownership right now, you have Blackman at 12%, you have Hampson at 11%, nobody else above 10. So even though they are going a little bit overowned, they do still project pretty well since it is Coors Field. They are still relatively low owned individually. So certainly don't like the spot against Musgrove as much as I do against the spot again, as much as I do the spot against Cool, but still like the Rockies here.
Now, one guy was popping up my spreadsheet here. I was like, this has got to be an error. Like, we have a Stewie Ruiz projected to be like the best stolen base guy in the MLB. Like, this guy has 4 plate appearances so far in MLB, but in AAA, 23 stolen bags over 142 plate appearances. So that would be like once every 1.5 games or something. In Double A this year, 37 stolen bases over 232 plate appearances. Like, do you know anything about this guy? Because those numbers are like off the page.
No, I just know that he steals a lot. So that's 60 stolen bases so far this season. That's absolutely insane. I know he got thrown out stealing last night. Apparently, it was like a bang bang play. They overturned the call. They had called him safe and then called him out. But yeah, I mean, he's not projected to be a particularly good hitter. But if this guy gets on base, I think it's pretty safe to say he's running. It's kind of their version of Jorge Mateo.
And yeah, I mean, this is a great park for getting something in play because there's so much more space in between players. So I think that is very intriguing. Like if I was like, there's no way I'm gonna play this guy, but then you look into the numbers, it's like, damn, like maybe he's one of the better plays on the team. I'm very perplexed here what to do, but I mean he's in the game to steal bases, so uh and I imagine he's good at defense as well. But that's a guy to keep an eye on because like this spot seems good. If he gets like this is the kind of guy if he gets on base at all, you're happy because it's either like an extra base hit, less likely, or a single or walk, and then you get the opportunity for that bag. So
And I
really,
think that was a really good point you made about Coors because not only um, does the large outfield make it so a single he can just turn a single into a double, but you're just gonna get bloopers falling in too. So it's just you have a higher batting average on balls in play in Coors as long as he hits it. It's the perfect park for him.
definitely. So maybe take some shots on the guy, even though he's batting ninth. All right, Houston at LA. This one, everyone's going for the pitchers because you got Otani versus Javier. 70 degrees in LA tonight, so favorable pitching conditions, and both teams have good lineups, so that does neutralize the pitchers a little bit, but they're looking pretty strong today. What are you seeing here?
So I like, I mean, Otani's Otani. So at 9,100, I think he's a good option. 10-5 on FanDuel, he's fine. Still kind of surprised that he's getting as much ownership as he is compared to Christian Javier. I think these guys are a lot closer given the matchups that they have. Otani this year has a 34.4% strikeout percentage. Javier is at 32.9 as a starter. A little bit higher walk percentage for Javier, 9.7 to 6.2. Higher xFIP, 3.8 to 2.55. I'm not making the case that Javier is as good a pitcher as Otani. He isn't. But we don't have an Astros lineup yet, but assuming it's the normal Astros lineup, it's going to be good. It's going to be tough to strike out. On the other hand, the Angels have Shohei Otani, Taylor Ward. Mike Trout is not in the lineup today. Stefanik, I think, was the guy that they've been leading off, who isn't. He's like an average, or he projects to be an average hitter, but he's really tough to strike out. He's not in the lineup today. They recalled Joe Adell. He's batting fifth. So you have Shohei Otani leading off. He's obviously a really, really good hitter. He also strikes out like 25, 26% of the time. Taylor Ward's hitting second. He's a really good hitter. He has a career 26.7% strikeout percentage, 23.7 so far this year. Renjifo's around 19%. And then after that, Jared Walsh around 27, 28%. Joe Adell, 32% in his career. Jonathan VR is mid to upper 20s. So is Max Stassi. So is Brandon Marsh. I don't know off the top of my head what Velasquez is, but he's hitting ninth. I don't really care that much. It doesn't affect my point. There are a ton of strikeouts in this lineup. There's no Mike Trout. Christian Javier has very good strikeout stuff, and he's getting like half the ownership of Otani, half the ownership of Severino. I absolutely love Christian Javier today.
Dude, Adam, I hate to break it to you, but your full-throated, touting of Christian Javier probably just drove up his ownership to the point, where you're not getting that edge anymore. But it looks like when we plugged in the new LA lineup, you're right. The projections did improve significantly. He went up like a full point, so that takes him from being the average pitcher to like a good one. So I think Javier's in a good spot, and then Otani. It seems like his price never really reflects how good of a pitcher he's been this year with a 34% K rate. So tough matchup. But the lineup for Houston today, it's not out, but the projected lineup is has got a pretty weak bottom of the order. So I think he's pretty good tonight. It looks like the ownership is there. What are you doing with Otani?
Yeah, I mean, I still like getting to Otani. He's underpriced for his talent level. He's really, really good. And like you said, the bottom of this order isn't the best. Altuve, Diaz, Tucker, Bregman, Gurriel, Pena, those guys are all good, or at least, in Diaz's case, pretty good. But JJ Matievich projects for like a 30% strikeout percentage. Jake Myers isn't here to hit. Martin Maldonado certainly is not here to hit, even though he did come through huge for me with a couple home runs the other day. So the bottom of this order will give you some strikeouts. And again, you're just getting Otani at a price point cheaper than his talent level. The biggest, question I have though is just, and it's what I was just saying about Javier, and maybe it changes now that, his projection came up, but if we're really going to get Ohtani at 37, 38% and Javier at 16, 17% at the same price, I love just turning some of that into Javier in the better matchup.
Definitely. All right, guys. Hopefully we gave you some good ideas for winners tonight. And if you do have a big score, let us know on Stokastic Hall of Fame and just tag me and Adam. Guys, hit the like and subscribe. That'll give Greg and Eric that positive feedback that can get them going with some good picks here in the next hour. So good luck and stay tuned.
What's going on, everybody? Eric Lindquist at Stokastic on the Odd Shopper channel, coming to you with my top 3 prize picks for today. It is Wednesday, July 13th. Looking forward to this slate. 9 games in the evening window. That's what we're going to focus on. But hit that like button, subscribe button, and notification bell. Goes a long way for me on this video. Goes a long way for us here at the Odd Shopper channel as we continue to give you some of the best sports betting content and prize picks content in the entire industry. No doubt about it. Use promo code OSMO as well. I know the name changed to Stokastic, but it's still promo code OSMO. Look at that. It's in that top corner. Wait, my box is so far away from that box. You know what I'm saying, though. It says OSMO. Use that to get up to $100 free when you sign up over at PrizePicks today. They'll just match you up to $100. That's great stuff. So use that today, and let's get to it because right off the bat, there's kind of 2 things that are very interesting about this slate, and I'm not sure how I want to attack it. But I'm going to talk through it here because pitcher fantasy score, there's Tony Gonsolin, 32.5. And I do agree that this is a little bit high for Gonsolin in St. Louis, 91 degrees. But I love this man, and I'm just going to be avoiding this play altogether. And I'm actually finding some way that I can like Tony Gonsolin, but not have to worry about the fantasy score, which, again, quality start, 90-ish pitches, St. Louis, matchup. I don't know. There's so many different things. As far as a projection goes, under a 32.5 would make sense there. But I actually think I like the Nolan Arenado under of 0.5 runs plus RBIs even more. And let's talk through this because, again, kind of weird for me to say, oh, well, I like the under of the one guy. I mean, it really just comes down to what Tony Gonsolin's strikeout rate has been this season, 24%. He is as elite as it gets, leads the MLB in terms of ERA. Can we expect a little negative regression there? Sure. 2.89 expected ERA compared to his 1.62 ERA. That's going to change. But in 16 starts this season, Tony Gonsolin has not given up more than 2 runs. So you're basically looking at Nolan Arenado. Is he one of the best hitters in this lineup? No doubt. Paul Goldschmidt won. I don't think there's any question about that. Arenado long-term, probably number 2, just over the course of his career, his sample size. Much better against lefties, but at the same time, still pretty serviceable here. This is just a big number when you look at a number of the sports books that have lines posted for his runs scored and RBIs, somewhere lingering on both in the plus 160 range. Now, of course, you're fading both the run and the RBI. If he hits a home run, he goes over on both of those, whatever. He only needs 1. But I just think that if you're shorting this, your true odds are looking about like minus 150. I mean, the under of 0.5 runs scored over at DK right now is minus 195. So for context, I always try to go to the plus side just to really give me like, what's that baseline going to be? Like the over of it. We talk about it a lot in terms of home runs, because obviously the under is always going to be drastically larger in terms of the gap between, how much plus money you're getting, because people like to bet overs and that's just the way that it is. But this is just something that stands out to me as a really good under against Tony Gonsolin. He's just been nails. And I've been seeing a little bit of blasphemy on Twitter today from people saying that Tony Gonsolin's not nearly as good. And do I expect him to, again, have negative regression in terms of ERA? Absolutely. But he limits hitters to a 32.2% hard hit percentage, a 217 expected batting average, a 374 expected slugging, doesn't walk guys, a sub 7% walk rate. Everything lines up for him to succeed in this spot. So I think I've said enough. I think I've said my piece. The under of 0.5 runs plus RBIs.
Do whatever.
Everybody just wants to play a little Mario now. That's all I was thinking about. Welcome, everybody, to the MLB Live Before Lock show. presented by Odd Shopper. I'm Eric Lindquist. Yes, that is my name. That is Greg Ehrenberg on the other side of me. At G Ehrenberg DFS is where you can go follow him. Go follow me at Eric Lindquist while you're at it, because that's nice. I would appreciate that. But Greg, how you doing, my dude?
Good. We've got more of the same today. Another day, another slate, another one where there's a lot of games to choose from, and the Padres pick up a third of the ownership of the field. So, more or less the same talking points as what we've had recently.
You know what's nice is at least they adjusted the San. Oh no, wait, they didn't do that. They did not adjust the San Diego pricing.
Nope.
Fancy that. Good Lord, it's just so weird. I feel like I've looked at this slate for 24. Oh, I have looked at it for 24 hours. I started digging into everything for the betting video over on the Odd Shopper channel, which, again, if you haven't had a chance to go over there, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell over there so you can get all the great content we have going. Greg's got his best effing bets every single day over there. Go give those a like. Go give those a watch. We just got Josh Engelman over there doing content. I mean, so many good things are happening over on the Odd Shopper channel, so definitely be checking that out. We got Tyler Zander behind the virtual glass. Looking forward to this one. Hi, partner. I bet you're just ready for some Open Championship as well. Talking through the golf. You guys want to check that show out? We got a special guest showing up. He's fancy, and I would want to go watch that tonight. No doubt about it. Joining Alex Baker and Jason Rousland. But Greg, let's talk some baseball. That's what we're here to do. What stands out to you on this slate other than, hey, it looks like the other two we just got done with the last 2 days?
Yeah. So, I mean, beyond that, and it's also something, kind of similar in terms of the Padres are so popular on DK that almost every team outside of them is positive leverage. Outside of the Yankees, we have the Yankees also being quite a bit popular, 15.3% ownership. There is a little bit of a different outlook on FanDuel where the Padres are priced more reasonably. So over there, they actually only have a 24% ownership share. They're still going over-owned, but not quite to the same extent on DK where the lineup's kind of free.
I am with you. DK is such a pain. I don't even know what to do because you can play any pitcher you want. You can do whatever you need to, and then you can play San Diego bats. If you're playing cash, that's what you're doing. Congratulations. There's your cash build. I think tournaments, though, you and I have had the same philosophy. It's gone kind of well the first day. I mean, you needed Cronenworth and maybe Machado, but you could have gotten away without him. You pretty much needed Cronenworth, though. Yesterday went fantastic, and I still got obliterated, so that was cool. Yerman Mercedes was my highest owned batter. He put up 25, and or like 30, and you know what else everybody else did? Nothing. So we need to find bats that do something today. We'll be talking about stacks next, but let's go to the pitchers that we can easily pay up for no matter what you want to do here today, because there's really not that many offenses that are super expensive. And Shane McClanahan really pulling quite a bit of ownership. I didn't think he was going to end up this popular. I think everybody saw that Red Sox lineup. They thought, oh boy, all jam. How do you feel about him right from the get-go, considering he's got the most ownership on this slate?
Well, there's a handful of pitchers with a lot of ownership, and I guess we do have to separate this a little bit, DK from FanDuel, although it's kind of a lot of the same similar type ownership. But DK, Shane McClanahan, Shohei Ohtani, Luis Severino, and John Gray. Those are your four guys. They're picking up north of 30% ownership, and I understand why all of them do. Then over on FanDuel, you've got the same group of pitchers that are really popular, but it does stand out to me that on FanDuel, where John Gray is priced all the way up to $9,000, he's the most popular of all those pitchers. That feels a little off to me. You got a $9,000 John Gray picking up over 20% ownership when Severino, Ohtani, and McClanahan are all in the teens. So I think it's pretty easy to get to the higher price guys over on FanDuel than it is for John Gray. DK is going to be different because he's only 7,700. He's really in a tier of his own as far as SP2 options go. But it is really hard to figure out which of the high price guys I like the most because I think they all warrant a lot of consideration.
Well, I mean, I thought it was pretty easy, and I'm bummed out because that Angels lineup came out right before we got to lock. Christian Javier was going to be my highest owned pitcher. I don't think it was going to be close. I didn't expect Trout to play after getting pulled yesterday. Why would you? It's Mike Trout. We know he's had injury issues in the past. We know he's one of, if not the best player in baseball, and you need to be taking care of that guy because your team is not taking care of him. That's for sure. Christian Javier was always going to be the guy that I wanted to play a ton of with him out of the lineup. There's just so many strikeouts. I mean, you're going to probably get, oh God, it's just going to be beautiful for watching this pitching matchup in the late night hammer. And Javier was always going to be the guy that I got to more of, even over my boy Ohtani, for FanDuel purposes, for DraftKings purposes, for absolutely everything. But McClanahan, I wanted to start with mainly because he's the only 10K pitcher who could run into some kind of issues of being cost prohibitive. But even that, for DK. I don't expect FanDuel 11.5. You're running into some interesting stuff because then you have Severino. You have other guys that are not 10K in that range. Christian Javier, that aforementioned. For DK, though, in the 9K range, let's do a little rank 'em, shall we? I want you to rank Javier, Severino, and Ohtani.
So rank them in terms of how much you want to play them in tournaments, my
In
expectations.
in tournaments, DK, Javier, Severino, Ohtani. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, this is so tough because this is what I was thinking about before we started too, is like, who do I really want to prioritize amongst this 9K range? And one thing that's tough is the matchup for Ohtani is clearly more difficult than what these other pitchers have. But at the same time too, Ohtani has been so untouchable lately that I'm not really sure it matters. And the same thing goes for McClanahan as well. Matchup against the Red Sox, even if it isn't the best lineup they could possibly put out, it's still an easier matchup for Severino, say, against the Reds than it is for McClanahan against the Red Sox. But McClanahan has also been untouchable. So I'm going to go Ohtani 1. And also, we don't have, between Ohtani and Severino, there aren't really ownership concerns. They're fairly similar. 31.5 for Severino, 37.5 for Shohei Ohtani. So I'm going to go Ohtani 1, Severino 2, and then Javier 3, mostly because he's pitching on the road, whereas the other two guys are at home.
Gotcha. It's weird because I think I have the exact opposite order. Kind of rearranging everything. Javier's still going to be 1 for me, I think. Again, I might be really upset with myself when I get to lock. And that's kind of what I think a lot of this is just trusting the tools, trusting everything we have here at Stokastic, the best tools in the industry to give you guys an opportunity to win money. And I just keep refreshing the ownership. And I'm going to keep refreshing the ownership all the way up until lock because, I mean, the difference between Severino, Ohtani, and Javier in terms of pure projection is less than 2 fantasy points. Less than 2 fantasy points. So for me, I just want to play a little bit of the ownership game. And as it stands right now, Javier's come up to 27%. He was sub 20% before the Trout news. And now I'm starting to get more into the Ohtani camp because all things being equal, I think I'm with you where Ohtani would be 1 for me. Severino against Cincinnati, it's the worst ballpark to be pitching in out of all 3, that's for sure, in Yankee Stadium. But I don't know why the Reds rolled out the lineup that they did. I'm looking at this thing, and that's a lot of right-handed bats against Severino, who has some pretty pronounced splits. So I think this could be an even better spot for him. I'm trying to tweak some stuff to get a little bit more of him. You got to have some shares of everybody if you're playing 150, but I'm with you where I think Ohtani, in terms of pure projection, if I'm just getting to one of them, I think he's still probably the guy, as you said, it probably doesn't matter because he's been so good with that splitter.
Yeah, and then also Yordan Alvarez is out for the Astros. Yep. That helps a little bit. And then, I get there's a little bit of an ownership discount on Javier, but like you said, now that it's the most recent ownership update, it's not that significant. You got Javier at 27%, Severino 31%, and now Ohtani's at 34%. So, I mean, we're kind of splitting hairs in terms of ownership. It's fairly similar.
You remember the last time you and I shorted John Gray on a slate?
Well, it's happened multiple times. I remember the time it went the worst.
Yeah, I can remember. Well, it was going so well, and then it went so poorly. And It was by far his best outing of the season. And it's so tilting because he was mega chalk.
And it was your first Hunter Green slate of the year, if I'm not mistaken. It was.
There were a lot of Hunter Greens. I know I played a lot of Hunter Green throughout the season. I've played way too much of him.
But that was one of the first starts of the year that Hunter Green was on a main slate.
That's true. They had a lot of 3:40 or I guess normal person time, 6:40 Eastern time start times. So they had a later start for that one. He was on a main slate and finally was able to lose money with him. That was great. I enjoyed it.
But people probably don't know what we're talking about. So there was a slate, and because
the 1st of June, by the way,
I remember this very well. So there's a John Gray slate where he's projected to be uber popular. The exact number he was projected for something like 40% ownership. And there was a couple of cheaper pitchers that Eric really liked on that slate. One of them was Hunter Green going up against the Boston Red Sox, and he got off to a crazy good start. He pitched like 3 shutout innings with 7 strikeouts, and then he got his ass kicked in the 4th inning and wasn't able to finish. For fantasy purposes, though, it wasn't. He was very cheap. He was going up against a chalky offense. He had 8 strikeouts in 3+ innings. He gave up 4 runs. It was overall a positive start. And then the other guy you were on as well that slate was Kyle Bradish. And Kyle Bradish also had a solid start. But it didn't matter because Hunter Green and Kyle Bradish both scored somewhere around like 20 fantasy points. And he had to chalk John Gray, who were looking for guys to pivot off of. He went out and scored like 50 fantasy points or something absurd. So it ultimately didn't matter. But I think what you're trying to get out here is what are we going to do with a chalky John Gray today?
Yeah, well, I'll get there in a second because Oliver Closeoff brings up something. $1.99 super chat. Cool is throwing the first no in Coors history. Oh, my friend. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I'm 99.9% sure that Hideo Nomo threw a no-hitter for the Los Angeles Dodgers. My dad was in attendance at that game in Coors Field.
Ubaldo Jimenez a few years ago. When
Yeah,
Ubaldo
so
Jimenez was decent.
what are you saying, Oliver Closeoff? So one, that's a lying super chat, but we appreciate the money. So you can go ahead and lie, do whatever you want, like a politician in the super chats if you give us money. But two, Chad Kuhl, if he throws a no, I will shave every piece of hair off of my body. Every single piece of hair.
All right.
Every single piece of hair. I will have none of it. And I will go to Chicago naked as the day I came. Probably less so because I'm sure I had a little bit of hair when I was born.
Well, phrasing. I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would.
Phrasing. I got it. I heard it now. Yeah.
It actually did. I'm trying to look. Ubaldo Jimenez no hitter.
If Chad Kuhl throws a perfect game, will you get like a tattoo of Chad Kuhl riding a goat at Coors Field?
I will. Okay, here's what I'll do. I'll shave every piece of hair off of my body. Secondly, I will get a tattoo on my neck of a unicorn with Chad Kuhl riding it on a rainbow.
Maybe not neck. Like, we don't want to ruin your life when Chad Kuhl
No,
does this.
no, I love it. Then, I like neck tattoos. Why not? I have no problem with it. It's a unicorn. It's beautiful. It's majestic.
Shouldn't something be a reward for the audience, though?
I mean, I need to focus. Guys, we're focused. I'm laser focused. I'm just trying to specifically come up with what I'll do if Chad Kuhl throws a no-hitter. And all I can think of are terrible things to do to myself. And it's not going to happen, so it doesn't matter. I just
looked this up. Ubaldo Jimenez is the only no-hitter in Rockies history, but it was on the road against the Braves at Turner Field. But yes, Hideo Nomo does have a no-hitter at Coors.
There you go. My dad was there. That's the only reason that I knew that one off the top of my head. That's a pretty random one to just know. So just throwing it out there. But we continue on. Wilmer Flores home run. If anybody gives a shit about that, I really don't. Look at this. A rainbow and a chalk from EMAC. Guys, I'm just saying this could end poorly. You guys come up with it. You tell me what I get tattooed on my neck. I think a unicorn with Chad Kuhl's face. For the rest of my life, I'd have to explain who was on my neck because nobody would know.
Yeah, live golf, and then when the golf league folds 15 years from now, and people don't know what it is, and you have to explain it to them what live is. You have to explain your character on this show, why you didn't like live golf. So I'm sure the entire audience will get behind this. If Chad Kuhl throws a no hitter today, Eric has to get a live golf tattoo across his neck.
If he throws a perfect game, I'll get a live tattoo and it'll say live right here. If he throws a perfect game like that, it's got to be a perfect game and it'll say live in caps right there.
And then you have to get the no regrets tattoo on your chest. Right?
No regrets. Let's go.
So it'll be like live. And then you pull down your shirt and it says no regrets.
Chin strap down to my ball fro. Step Brothers. It's beautiful.
Well, I've never been more indifferent about a no hitter now.
2 hours and 20 minutes until the most important first inning in the history of baseball. That's for sure. Man, I got Tyler Xander smiling, head bobbing. He's like really into this idea. Guys, Chad Kuhl's going to give up like 3 hits in the first inning. Let's all chill out. It's completely done. But we talked about all the pitchers that I really want to care about in the 9K range. I don't think this is a slate where you really have to go to Musgrove against the Rockies. Although no Chris Bryant still on the paternity list. That's cool. That's useful. But like, I don't really see a reason to try to get to him there. And Gonsolin, as much as you and I like him, there's been slates where we've gone there. He's now up to 9,400. He's a guy that I think in this game environment, it's over 90 degrees in St. Louis. It's just a tough spot to pitch. You guys, if you were watching that PrizePicks video that I did a little bit earlier, I kind of touched on that where Nolan Arenado, I'm not really there, but also Tony Gonsolin. I think I'm going to be shorting him a lot today on PrizePicks at 32.5. Any shares of those guys in 150 for you, Greg?
Joe Musgrove, I think, is playable. I've actually liked the pitchers as contrarian options a fair amount in this series. More on the Padres side, obviously. Like Sean Manaea, played him a couple of days ago. Yesterday, got exposure to Mike Clevenger, was going really well until he fell apart. Was it in the 5th or 6th inning? But Musgrove's been really, really good this year. I get the Rockies have a good offense, but it's the same thing I've said the last couple of days. If you do insist on playing a really chalky Padres stack, which I understand why people would want to do that, All you have to do to make that a lineup that isn't duped at all is you play Joe Musgrove at pitcher. You get upside for him because the Colorado Rockies, as much as they're playing at altitude, the offense does suck and they're not good against right-hand pitching. And Musgrove really has had an outstanding season. So if you're playing a 1% owned pitcher, it really doesn't matter who the hitters are past that. So I think there is utility for Musgrove against the Rockies.
All right, now let's go to John Gray. We'll actually have the conversation about John Gray before we went on the beautiful aside where you gave me a compliment. Yay, Hunter Green, Kyle Bradish. We were going to win all the money. And then we lost all of the money on that slate. But anyway, we continue on. We go forth in the world and we conquer. I have 0% John Gray today. I get it. I understand why John Gray is popular, but I don't find a need for him. I think there's more upside going to McClanahan, going to, my 3 highest owned pitchers right now, Javier, Ohtani, McClanahan. I don't see any need to have to get away from these guys. I find it very hard to believe that 5, even if they finish within 4 or 5 of John Gray, yeah, maybe that gives you more access to bats. But I have lineups with $2,000-$3,000 on the table today that I'm leaving over in a lot of these San Diego lineups and other things that I have. I'm just scrolling through and there's just no need for me to get to John Gray. 1, are you with me? And 2, do you still have shares of him?
Yeah, so I'm underweight to the field on John Gray. I think he's a little bit too popular, but I don't think he's all that much of an issue as a pitcher, particularly because the matchup against the Oakland A's, 26.5% K rate, the highest mark of his career. And then also his underlying numbers, it's better than it's been in recent years, which isn't surprising because he's pitched his entire career at Coors Field. You take him out of Coors Field, it just stands to reason he's going to produce better results. And then something else to consider also, he's gotten considerably better as the season has gone on. So in March, April, May, it's not to say that he was terrible in May. He had a 22.2% K rate, a 3.43 FIP. But as we've seen the season go on in June, 2.58 FIP. He also had a 29.7% K rate. We haven't really seen him pitch much in July, but he has gotten progressively better. May was better than March and April. June was better than May. And he has opened up July with a nearly 30% K rate. So I think that right now he's healthy, which is not something we see all that often from John Gray. He's a great matchup. And I think that he is the best play on the slate, who's sub 8K over on DK. FanDuel is a different story. I find it very hard to back John Gray as the most popular pitcher on FanDuel at 9,000.
Yeah, that's so crazy to me. I don't understand it. I'm glad that's the last thing I was going to finish with is I get that he's a good option on a different slate. On a slate where I need to play John Gray and I need to have a mid-tier guy, I imagine I would have probably near the field, but I look at all my lineups here and I just don't see a lot of reasons that I would have to get there. The only way is if I would have jamming Judge and Stanton and jamming every single Yankee bat, which I don't want to do today. I can't figure out a way that I would have to get down to John Gray and play a ton of him. I'm only playing 50 lineups today. So I guess I'm just making an aggressive stand where it's no matter what, I'm maybe as I finish things up here, because the other day I was I'm going to have 20, 25% based on my last run of whoever it was that I was shorting. And then I got to lock and I was at 48%. I'm finishing this up now. I right now have 3%. I just finished up all my lineups here. 3% John Gray. I can't imagine that I wouldn't be better off just removing him. So I'm going to take him out here as we go. So I can just say firm stance, John Gray, none of him. There we go.
Yeah. And I understand why you would end up landing that way. And like I said, I'm going to be underweight to him, but at the same time too, I don't find him to be totally unplayable. And I do think that there are some pivots we could go to in this price range. One that really stands out to me on DK is Lucas Giolito. The strikeouts are there for him. The results are not, though. He's been fairly terrible this year. He just got lit up by the Detroit Tigers, which is never great.
Is that good?
But he did generate strikeouts, which is something he does fairly often. So there's going to be starts where Lucas Giolito just doesn't give up all of the runs in the world. And those are going to be starts that end up leading to really, really high fantasy upside, because as much as he has a 5.05 ERA, 4.55 expected ERA, and he's nowhere near the pitcher he's been in previous years, the strikeout stuff is exactly the same. That is one thing that's remained unchanged.
Yeah, I get that. I get that as well. I mean, there's definitely upside there, but oh man, he's just so popular. And FanDuel just full fade for me.
Well, he's not popular.
John Gray?
No, Giolito.
Oh, Giolito. No, I love Giolito. That was going to be the last. That's the last guy who's showing up. Oh, okay. Well, I was finishing another thing because I'm a jerk and don't listen to you. Everybody hit the like button. Nick Senzel was scratched. So if you were playing a 0.1% owned Nick Senzel, please remove him from your pool because that would be bad. You shouldn't have had him in your pool anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think anybody's listening was like, oh, fuck, my builds are screwed. I had a bunch of Nick Senzel exposure.
I don't know. I've done worse things in my life.
Yeah, a lot of them on this show. You might be getting a live tattoo on your throat.
I might be getting a live tattoo. I might be getting a unicorn tattoo. I might be baby goes on. I don't know.
I would.
I'm going to be looking beautiful.
So
beautiful.
When you lose this bet, Eric, you have to record when you explain to your wife what is happening.
No, my wife is not here. That's the only reason. The door is open. My dog's on my foot. And like legitimately the only reason, because she overheard me saying this, the door would be open. She would be walking back here, printing off more divorce papers. And you know this to be true.
Again? What happened?
Round two.
So the divorce fell through last time.
Yeah.
How'd you convince her?
She realized she had to give up half of her things, and she's, no, that was a no deal, a deal or no deal. It was a no deal for her in that regard. I love you, honey. There's no way she's watching. Who gives a shit? We're fine. Other pitchers you might want to get to a share or two of. Man, chat is having fun today. I'm having fun today too. Lucas Giolito, I'm with you there. I have a couple shares of this Winkowski individual against Tampa Bay, but I don't even know if I need to have them. He's like the one guy at 6,500. He's landed in a couple. I don't think he's any good, but it's a fantastic ballpark. And Tampa Bay, this current lineup that they're rolling out, no Wander Franco. Brandon Lau hasn't been there since 1992, it feels like. I just don't really find any kind of a need to have to go down here, but he's just randomly showing up in a couple lineups, so I'm not going to change it. Anybody else on the pitching board for you?
No, I do have a Winkowski bet, though. I bet him under 4.5 strikeouts earlier this morning. So
there you go. So that further bolsters the case for him. Not.
As for the cheap pitching options really suck today. That's something else also that I get to guys like John Gray and Lucas Giolito. I mean, everybody's getting to John Gray anyway, but Lucas Giolito also is a contrarian play. His ownership is down to 3.8% over on DK. On FanDuel, he is more expensive, so it's kind of a different story, but he's only 1% owned. But you start to look at the other options below 8K. Is there a single guy that you think is legitimately viable outside of Gray or Giolito? Like, I don't even think there's somebody who, if you run 150 lineups and you get 2 or 3 of somebody in lineups, whatever. But there's not a single guy I want to invest in on this slate that's priced below 8K outside of John Gray and Lucas Giolito.
I'm with you. Oliver Closeoff, back for more. Eric forgets a perfect game is also a no. No, I was correcting what Tyler said. Tyler was like, oh, a perfect game. And I was like, no, a perfect game, I'll get the live tattoo. A no-hitter, I get the unicorn tattoo. Actually, a perfect game, I'll get both. And I shave every single piece of hair on my body. So I will be one of a kind walking down the streets of Chicago. That is for damn sure.
And also, I know Eric hasn't agreed to this yet, but if Chad Kuhl, 27 strikeout, perfect game, then Eric is going to get one of those studs tattooed through the middle of his cock. I forget what it's called. One of those piercings. What do they call it? Just,
I don't know, like a mushroom thing. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the word for. If Chad Kuhl throws 27 strikeouts.
Yeah. It's called like a Sir Charles or something. Prince Charles.
Oh there we go. Prince Charles. I knew it was something like that.
Yeah.
I knew it was classy as shit. There it is.
Yeah.
You know what else is
Prince
classy?
Albert.
There's never been
a
Prince Albert. There it is. There's never been a better segue than this. If you want to be the Prince Albert of the DFS streets, head over to Stokastic now and sign up using MLB Live. See, this is the most interesting way that you could possibly do this. Guys, MLB Live. That gets you 50% off your first week of Stokastic Plus. Everything we talk about here behind the paywall in terms of the top pitchers tool, the top stacks tool, the top batters tool. Again, shout out Shanzon, shout out the whole data team, Alex Baker, Eddie Lai, Steve Buzzard, the best in the industry, bar none, updating everything constantly. Plus, the Open Championship locks tonight, regardless. East Coast, West Coast, doesn't matter. Everything is going to be locking super late. So get all of the ownership, get everything that you want there. By the way, the ownership's free, but the Top Golfers tool is not, which is one of the best tools that we have at the site. Greg talked about it yesterday. Guy doesn't really know a lot about PGA DFS and he uses the tool and he makes money. That's the way that I feel about the NASCAR, the Top Drivers tool. I don't know jack shit, but won like $400 on NASCAR the other weekend. I was like, that's awfully nice. So if you want to have tools that can just print money for you, use promo code MLB Live right now. Stop guessing, start winning. Get the Prince Albert special here at Stokastic Plus today.
We should change the promo codes. MLB Live, and then we'll add the Prince Albert. That's got to be painful when it happens, right? We got Obi-Wan in chat.
Can't imagine. Hang on. Out of 862 people in chat, over under 2. No, I'll go 1.5. I'll set the line at 1.5. Over under 1.5 people who have a Prince Albert
that are watching the show right now.
They're watching the show.
Oh, how many? And what was the line you said?
1.5.
Oh, that's very easily and under
10 to 12, to be quite honest.
What? You are out of your mind, Tyler. I set the line. We're talking 1 in 1,000. You can't, guys. We care so much about that part of us. Like, we can't possibly, unless you are getting paid a lot of money, or in the event that you need to prove that once and for all you're the toughest person in your city. There is no way you do such a thing to yourself.
See, Tyler's skewing the numbers because he's actually got 6 of them. It's just
Tyler's like, well, I just Googled it and I think it'd be awfully fun. It makes a unique characteristic on yourself.
He's got 6 of them. It's just lined up and down a shaft of the ladder.
Oh, Tyler, don't please. HR. We're going to the top stacks, fam. Hit that like button if you're having as much fun as what I think Greg and I are having today. I never know. Greg, he's a machine over there. He's just a man who prints money and just makes fun of me. That's what he gets his real joy. He's like, ha, machine.
Oh no, I would make fun of Tyler.
Good, as you should.
And somebody in chat before too.
Yeah. Oh man. But please smash that like button. We have way too few of likes. I think automatically, if we don't get over 300 likes, there's no way this bet is active. So in order to activate the bet, over 300 likes, I think that's fair. Yeah, because we had like 220 likes. I'm not going to get a neck tattoo of a unicorn. That's absurd. So there you go. Best of luck to you, Chad Cool. I hope you get taken out in the first. I really, really do. Let's continue on our way. We got to talk stacks, and we're going to start with the guy that Chad Cool is facing, and that's the San Diego Padres, who I'm cheering for big time now. But even if I'm not invested in them in terms of DFS all that much here on the other side, we get Abrams down there at 2K flat. We get Hosmer at 2K flat. We get Mazzara at 2,100. We have all these batters. It's just a joke how this pricing works out. And I get it if they were playing in San Diego, probably still wouldn't have much of them. But in Coors Field, are you going to be taking as sharp of approach against this team as what you've taken the last 2 days, Greg?
It's going to be the same as yesterday for me. I'm not making any 5-man stacks of the Padres, but I'm cool with them as one-offs. They're a really good source of salary saving plays. And I think it's fine to mix and match them into lineups. I'm going to be underweight to each hitter individually, but still same deal where I'm making stacks of other teams, some really expensive stacks as well. Teams like the Dodgers, I think make sense to get to. The White Sox make sense. They're really, really expensive. And they're also not picking up all that much ownership individually. So as long as I'm playing stacks that are lesser owned, I'm cool with 1 or 2 of these guys as one-offs, but I'm not going to make any 5-man stacks of them when they're projected for 33% ownership over on DraftKings. FanDuel, I do think, is a little bit different of a story just because they are priced more appropriately. So on FanDuel, they're still over-owned, but it's not crazy because on FanDuel, we have them with a 25% ownership share, but a 22% chance to be a top stack. That to me is still a team to get to, just a team to get to less of than what the field has. DK, though, I'm just steering clear of full stacks.
All right, my favorite question. Every show you and I do together in baseball, who is your single entry stack of the day?
It is going to be the Chicago White Sox, who I'm warming up to a little bit. For the longest time, I was like, this White Sox team is just no good. But a lot of that was because of injuries. They've had so many guys that were out of their lineup. And now we're starting to see all these guys back in the mix now. So this White Sox lineup, I think it's going to start to find more success going forward. But the field is not really rocking them at all yet. And they have a good matchup today. So we have Luis Robert's in the lineup, Tim Anderson, we got Jose Abreu, Yoan Moncada, Eloy Jimenez. How many games this year have all these guys been in the lineup? 3, 4?
0.
Like, it hasn't been very many. It's only been a few games, and we're finally getting all these guys in there. So I think this spot against Savali, who's struggled this year, 6.28 ERA, 4.64 expected ERA. His ground ball rate is the lowest of his career, so there's a lot more balls being put in the air against him. He doesn't have great stuff. He's only striking out 21.7% of the hitters he faces. So I do think this is a really, really good matchup for the White Sox. I think Savali is one of the worst pitchers on the slate today, and the field isn't getting there because the field is all playing the Padres.
I get it.
Or the Yankees.
Yeah. You were guessing mine.
Oh, no. I was saying those are the only two, because we just got an ownership update. I don't know if you
got it. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
So yeah, on a sizable slate, half the field is playing the Yankees or the Padres over on FanDuel. The both of them are both really, really popular. And then similarly over on DraftKings, where we have a little bit more of the ownership going to the Padres, a little bit less to the Yankees, but still, these are the only two teams that are really negatively leveraged in the top stacks tool. Everybody else is close to positive leverage other than a couple of shitty teams. We got the Rockies are picking up negative leverage. But in general, because there's so much ownership going to the Padres and the Yankees, if you play any other offense, it's probably underowned.
Like the Dodgers. I love the Dodgers today. I loved them last night looking at the weather in St. Louis. Didn't really get an opportunity to go completely nuts on them the way that I might have wanted to yesterday because of the way that I liked other teams on a 14-game slate. But there's only a number of offenses that I can really make a case for on a slate like this today because there's so many good pitchers, some of them facing good offenses, and McClanahan facing Boston in that ballpark. I mean, what are you going to do with Boston? I'm not going to get there. I think the White Sox make a lot of sense. But as I look at the Dodgers, there's an opportunity to get some expensive bats that other people might not be playing. They're going two complete studs up top there. I mean, you can go McClanahan, Javier, but there's actually some savings in this lineup. And Jake Lamb has been really, really surprisingly good. He had really good AAA numbers. Seems like he always has good AAA numbers. Then he comes up to the bigs and just loses all of that power. I've been pretty impressed by what he's done so far. And there's been a couple situations where they could have pinch hit for him. And they, out of middle of nowhere, just said, you know what, you take the at-bat against a lefty. He's got a .531 expected slugging against both-handedness combined, still striking out a decent amount. But, that's another really cheap piece at 2,300. I'm not calling him, a direct pivot. Mazzara is infinitely better play. You're going to play him in cash. But in tournaments, you get to him, you get to Cody Bellinger batting sixth at 3,600. Max Muncy in the 7-hole, nobody's going to play him at 4,100, and I really don't care. He's still pop. I mean, he's still got crazy pop, even if it hasn't been there, as he gets acclimated to being back from the injured list. So, I feel good about this Dodger squad against Adam Wainwright. It is 90-plus degrees. It is going to play much easier as a ballpark there in St. Louis than what it normally does. So that's kind of my team that I'm looking at. I'm playing some single entry stuff today. I feel pretty firm that I'm going to be landing on that combination of Muncy, Bellinger, that 6, 7, 8 Muncy, Bellinger, Lamb. That for me is going to be something that for single entry, it's all right, I have my savings right there.
Yeah. So one thing, and I think the Dodgers are a fine team to get to. The reason I mainly lean towards the White Sox is just, I think that Adam Wainwright's better than Savali. And I think, I think also if you look at Wainwright's numbers, I get that his underlying numbers don't look great, but that's been the case a bunch of years in a row as he's aged. And he just seems to potentially be a pitcher that's better than what his peripheral stats are. So we have now seen every single year since 2019, he's outperformed his expected ERA by almost a full run compared to his ERA. So 2019, he had a 4.19 ERA with a 4.82 expected ERA. 2020, 3.15 ERA, 4.48 expected ERA. Last year, 3.05 ERA, 3.84 expected ERA. And then this year, 3.15 ERA and a 4.43 expected ERA. So at first glance, I look at that and I just go, all right, Adam Wainwright's been incredibly lucky. There's no way he could keep this up. But then it's well, he's done it for 4 years in a row. So maybe he can keep it up to some extent. There's something he does that just is able to limit the batting average on balls in play against him. And he has been a pitcher that historically has had better than league average strand rates. So he's 40 years old. He's clearly not as good as he was in previous years. I think the Dodgers are a good team to get to. It's just a slight lean to me towards the White Sox because I think Wainwright's better than Savali.
That's fair. Totally fair. I think the Dodgers are a better offense than the White Sox too. So yeah, I mean, that might be part of it. All things being equal for it, and better game environment just in terms of the heat that we're looking at in St. Louis, I suppose. Cleveland, under 70 degrees with the wind blowing in. But as you said before, Savali, he's bad enough that I really don't care. I'll definitely get to some White Sox shares. But any Colorado interest? Because this is a team that feels we've got negative leverage going for them right now. That's what happens when you don't have Chris Bryant in this lineup. And hey, when you really don't have that many good hitters in your lineup, but they've proven the ability. I mean, this is Coors Field still. There's still some decent enough lefties. It's just such a tough spot against Joe Musgrove. compared to what they normally would be facing back-to-back-to-back days. And now Blake Snell coming up tomorrow. That'll be another fun situation where we can't necessarily fire up Colorado in bulk, even though it's supposed to be like 100 degrees there tomorrow. That'll be fun to talk about on the morning slate. But any Colorado interest for you today?
No, because they're really popular against Joe Musgrove. And if I have to play one side of this game, it's going to be Joe Musgrove over the Colorado Rockies. The Rockies are the third most popular offense on the slate. The only teams taking more ownership, the Padres, no shock there. The Yankees, no shock there either. But it is a little jarring to see the Rockies be this popular on a slate that's this size, nearly 10% ownership going towards them. So I think this is a pretty easy team to avoid. Joe Musgrove, I'll pull up his numbers right now, but he's been really, really solid this year and has not had very many bad starts. Off the top of my head, maybe 2 the entire season that haven't gone well, but he's a 2.09 ERA, 2.96 expected ERA, 25.5% strikeout rate. So everything looks solid for Musgrove. Going forward, is he going to maintain an ERA right at 2? Probably not. But how many starts this year do you think he's allowed more than 2 runs?
Oh, we're in the Tony Gonsolin question. I can tell you Tony Gonsolin, 16 for 16. He's left 2 or less. Let's go. How many starts Musgrove's had? Probably
15.
15? I'll say 13. He's let 2 or fewer.
Correct. 13 of them, 2 or fewer earned runs. And one of them was 3. And it was a start on the road against the Dodgers. So he's had 1 bad start this year. It was against the Phillies, where he just didn't have his best stuff. Pitched 6 innings, gave up 6 runs, had 1 strikeout. That's really the only bad start we've seen out of Joe Musgrove. 14 out of 15 starts have been good. Obviously, pitching in Colorado at Coors Field at altitude, it's a totally different beast to deal with than anything else. But still, he's been so consistently good this year that it's hard for me to think that the Rockies are worth nearly 10% ownership on a sizable slate.
All right, guys, get those likes up. We need the likes to continue to go up here throughout the show so that we can give you some of these lower owned stacks, which we're about to talk about right now. So, Greg, obviously we talked about our single entry teams, our preferences. You definitely like the White Sox. I think that's a great call out. I like the Dodgers a little bit more. We're both fading San Diego and Colorado for the most part. Where else are we looking at on this slate? Who are the other teams that are showing up in your lineups?
Yeah. So, by the way, I'm also overweight to the Dodgers, but my number one stack to be overweight to, and also my single entry play today, is going to be the White Sox. As far as other teams to get to, and I'm just going to refresh the ownership to see if anything has changed, but I don't think that is the case. Although we should talk about before we get to other teams to get to, what are you doing with the Yankees, who are also fairly significantly negatively leveraged?
Yeah, I'm not playing a lot of them. I do like them. Again, prize picks. You give me Aaron Judge and you give me Rizzo LeMahieu, 1, 2, 3 in that lineup today as the trio for home runs. And you can correlate with Aaron Judge over 1.5 total bases, which was at minus 135 when I did my video. You're just getting such a good payout with that combination of any other play you might like for prize picks that it's hard for me not to like that as my preferred way to go for prize picks purposes. But for DFS, they're just so popular again today. And I get it. Tomorrow we get Luis Castillo on the mound. That's a plus, but like the rest of this entire Reds team is just so bad in terms of pitching. And Mike Minor, I will say Aaron Judge, Stanton, for whatever reason, have just had better numbers against righties this season. Aaron Judge, we've seen that for his entire career, this weird reverse splits thing that I don't really understand it, but you got to probably start saying there's a little bit of something there, but he's still an absolute lefty masher. It's just that he is a righty destroyer, I suppose is the right way of saying it. So Mike Minor is 526 expected slugging. He is no good. He is very, very bad, but I'm hoping that he just gives up 4 or 5. Nothing super crazy happens here because it's just a team, them and San Diego. If they go nuts, I'm not going to win money today.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be the same. It's always the case for me with Coors Field, but I think really, especially now that there's more people using lineup builders and optimizers, that means more people play the chalk. And there are some sports like basketball where the chalk is generally justified in basketball, right? If there's a cheap guy who's starting at center or point guard in the 3K, they're going to have a very high success rate in those kind of scenarios when a backup moves into the starting rotation. But for baseball, it's not to say the chalk isn't warranted on the Padres. It's clearly the team in the best spot on the slate. But you start to get in these scenarios where in large field tournaments, they're so popular. And then in single entry tournaments, even more so, where you're going to have these hitters like 40 to 50% owned, that the fail rate in baseball is so much higher than other sports that it kind of makes MLB DFS easier in some respects. So to what you're saying before, like if the Padres go off, yeah, it would be bad for me as well. But I mean, just blanket, I think the most plus EV thing you could do in MLB DFS right now is to just avoid Coors games in general.
I would agree with that. You're going to have days you lose. You're just going to lose. But you're going to have that regardless of whether you fade Coors or not. It's just so much easier to win when Coors doesn't go nuts. Like that's what it comes down to. It's not even that hard to figure out. Now, there's times when I've gone 150 of Coors stacks on certain slates, but they're not generally, they're usually like 5 or 6 game slates. And I'll just take every single combination because they have a 1.5 or 2 run higher projected on a certain team than anybody else on the slate. And it's like, all right, I'll just isolate this one spot and go nuts with it because it's hard for it to fail. But that is not generally the approach that I'm going to take. Every single slate has its own ins and outs, but as a rule of thumb, for sure, lower to Coors is the way to go. Outside of this one dude, this Esteury Ruiz dude who just keeps showing up in my damn lineups. So either his what is going on with my lineups right now? He's in like
I'm not looking.
everything.
You're the only one looking at him.
He's I'm just saying he's sub 10%, and I've never heard of him until this moment just now. I've never heard of him. No, he's up to 20% now. Okay. Thank God. I just refreshed that. And all right, now I got to swap it all back and bring the ownership. It doesn't matter. Who cares about it?
And just to reiterate before, if you want to play some of these guys as one-offs or, as 2-3-man secondary stack with the lower owned stack, that's more than acceptable. So I don't want to make it seem like the Padres are totally unplayable. I'm just not making any 5-man stacks of them.
Frank Castle. Eric plays checkers in MLB DFS. Greg plays chess. What? I think we're doing a lot of the same things today. I don't know.
No, I agree with Frank Castle. That's a good man out there.
Fuck you, Frank Castle. It's not very nice. Be nice.
I love you, Frank. You're a good man.
Okay.
Smart, forward thinking. You know your stuff.
Oh, you guys are fun, except for not. Rest of the board, I'm looking at Baltimore. I have a couple shares of Philadelphia against Ross Stripling. I expected them to be a little bit more popular, but they're just unowned, so that's cool. I'll play over the field of Philadelphia, but that's kind of it for me. Again, more consolidated stacks, more consolidated pitching. It's pretty clear what I'm cheering for. I mean, you could get to some Rangers against Blackburn, but he's been serviceable enough. I don't really want to do it. Anything else for you?
Yeah, I like the Rangers against Blackburn. Okay. I was doing my other contrarian stack to mention. So I've been light on Blackburn for the entirety of this season, and his numbers overall don't look bad, but we're starting to see cracks in the armor. His last start, he gave up 6 runs in 4 innings. He had a start 2 weeks ago against the Mariners where he gave up 7 runs in 4 innings. And we've just seen Paul Blackburn consistently up until this year suck. He's never been a guy that's pitched well. And he's also been a guy who hasn't pitched for long periods of time at the big leagues because he's been so bad that the A's just send him back to the minor leagues. Like, no, what the hell are we going to do with this guy? So last year he made 9 starts. He had a 5.87 ERA, a 5.44 expected ERA. Didn't really pitch much in 2020 or 2019. 6 starts in 2018 with a 7.16 ERA. So I'm not very high on Paul Blackburn in general. And then the fact that we're also starting to see some of the weaker outings from, like, his numbers in June and July are not good. They were really good in March and April and May. But if you look at the last couple of months, we had June to 4.51 FIP and an ERA over 5. July to this point, a 4.08 FIP, also an ERA over 5. These are numbers that are more in line with his career averages. And I do think going forward, he's going to be a guy with like a high 4s, low 5s type ERA. And the Rangers offense has looked improved in recent months. Recent games. One thing that's really helped them, Marcus Semien doesn't suck anymore. He really sucked at the start of the season. And now that he's actually playing like the player that he's been in previous years, it's really helped their offense out. So that is something that I like getting to as a contrarian stack to add to the list is the Rangers.
He was a below replacement level player at the beginning of the season.
Well below Marcus Semien.
Well below. I mean, that's just crazy to think about how much money they invested into him and Seager in the offseason and to basically get less than nothing from it.
Which also, 2 years ago, he was a replacement level player. In 2020, he had a 91 WRC plus and was worth 0.2 wins above replacement. Then last year, he was worth 6.2 wins above replacement. It was the best year of actually, it wasn't quite the best year of his career. He had another good year 4 years ago. Like, he's alternated good years with really shitty years. It's a really weird kind of back and forth that he's had. But yeah, he started off this year really poorly. And I was like, boy, that looks like a really bad investment. And then he started to get it going. But his WRC plus by month, If he keeps his trend up, he's going to be the best player in the history of baseball by the end of the year. March and April, 28 WRC plus. May, 79 WRC plus. Still terrible, but a marked improvement from the first month of the season. June, 139 WRC plus. So far in July, 163 WRC plus. So things are trending in the right direction. We're 2 months away from him homering every at bat.
Dude, that is wild. That is so wild. Also wild how good OddsShopper is. You guys need to head to OddsShopper right now here. We've got 15 minutes left here in the program, and you can play along at home. Go to oddshopper.com right now, set up an email address, and start winning money right now with some of the best projections in the entire sports betting industry with the help of Alex Baker on the previous show. You guys know him by now. Best DFS player that has ever walked this planet. That is for damn sure. He's now putting so much time and energy into making these OddsShopper projections the best they can possibly be. Tons of effort into the strikeout props, the home run numbers, everything you could possibly want directly on one page. They also have golf bets. So if you guys are looking to find some positive EV bets in the Open Championship streets for this weekend, you have just the place to go do that. That's over at OddsShopper. And I always turn it over to Greg here, but like legitimately, there's such an easy offer that you can use in conjunction with the projections on that page. And it is in the video description below. Head to BetMGM right now. Go to BetMGM, sign up for $10. If you play $10, you will get $200 free dollars just by putting $10 on any MLB money line tonight. It doesn't have to win. That is the key part. It doesn't even have to win. You simply bet that $10 and you'll get $200 free dollars directly into your account just by signing up and playing those $10. So there's nothing easier than heading to the description box below and automatically getting that money, putting it into play in the Open Championship, in more MLB, whatever your heart desires, you will have the opportunity to do it. So make sure you take advantage of that offer and then head to OddsShopper and shop for the best lines, whether it's a DK, FanDuel, PointsBet, wherever it might be. Make sure you're taking advantage of the best projections you could possibly find anywhere. That is at OddsShopper. Greg, anything that stands out to you in the sports betting streets for tonight?
Yeah, so I'm looking through the odds right now just to see what's changed from earlier in the day. And of the bets that I've placed, there's only one line that's still available, and that is plus money on Zach Wheeler for over 5.5 strikeouts. The matchup for him against the Blue Jays isn't great. The Blue Jays have one of the better offenses in baseball, but Zach Wheeler's really good, and he's consistently generated strikeouts other than the last two starts. So the last two starts for Zach Wheeler, he only had 5 strikeouts in each of them, which isn't that far below the 5.5 mark, but they both came against the Cardinals, which are one of the most difficult teams to strike out in all of baseball. And I think that is really driving down Zach Wheeler's strikeout here to the point where it's 5.5 with plus money on the over. The numbers overall for Wheeler have been really good this year. This is something we have projected as being a positive ROI bet, 19% ROI on the over. So that is the one bet I've placed today that is still on the board. Zach Wheeler over 5.5 Ks.
Absolutely love that. That is so good. It's weird because I really don't have a whole lot of him in DFS tonight, but it's just because of the strikeout outside of other guys in other spots. But man, is that a really good bet? That's kind of the nice part too, is that like you're playing the numbers, like everything is different when you go from DFS to this. Like you're just basically saying, all right, I just need to get winners. Like I want to make the most money over a long period of time, no matter what. I mean, you're doing that in DFS as well, but like in DFS, you're like, all right, I'm all right losing money in this spot because I know that I got it in good. And I guess that's true in a sports betting sense too. But like what it comes down to is like Zach Wheeler, hey, maybe not a great DFS option, but can be a phenomenal bet no matter what. So get extra exposure throughout your day to spots where it's like, all right, if he ends up breaking this slate, you still have exposure in the sports betting streets. And I think that can always be profitable and always a nice addition to your portfolio day in, day out. All right, we got to kind of round out stacks. I think we kind of covered everything that we talked about a little bit earlier there. I'm looking at, I mean, there's really nothing else that I have. Philadelphia was the one thing that I threw in at the very end. Baltimore a little bit, although Justin Steele's been serviceable, wind blowing in at Wrigley, where we'll be on Sunday. Looking forward to that. But anything else you wanted to talk about from a stack perspective, Greg?
Let's see. I'm trying to remember what we've talked about, and no, I think we've covered all of it. Teams I think are the highest priority stacks today relative to ownership: the White Sox, the Dodgers, the Rangers. Those would be my 3, but nothing else really that I think is pressing.
Amazing. Well, we'll recap for all the people out there. Who did you end up getting to? Your 3 most popular pitchers on this slate.
So nothing really surprising here, different from the field. McClanahan, Ohtani, Severino. Those are the 3.
And then your 3 favorite stacks. We know the White Sox were number 1.
Oh, just list them again. You asked me for my stacks, my pitchers, and then the stacks again. This is like doing a show with our old pal Emac when he has a senior moment. I'll do it again. 3 favorite stacks.
Did you say the stacks? Did you say the
yeah,
already?
Like maybe 45 seconds ago.
Oh, cool. Well, I would like you to say them again for my geriatric self.
All right. So for you, and if Emac's listening and has forgotten what we talked, I mean, we should probably say it every 60 seconds for Emac anyway. But White Sox,
hi, I'm Tom.
Dodgers, Rangers. Yeah.
Or it's it. 10-second Tom. Hi, I'm Tom.
That was 50 first dates.
Yep.
I was trying to remember. I knew the Adam Sandler movie. I was like, how many dates was it? And the number in the title though, was it
so
60?
Good.
Was it 50? Was it 30?
Hey, I'm Tom.
Yeah. Hey, what are your favorite stacks today, Tom?
Hey, I'm Tom. Okay,
what are your favorite stacks today, Tom?
I can't do it again. That's not good. But the Dodgers are number 1 for me. This is just kind of the way that it came out, so I'm not going to change it. Philadelphia is number 2, so there you go. I didn't expect them to be my second highest owned stack, but here we are. And then the Yankees ended up 3, but I am still underweight, which is weird because I'm scattershotting the board in a lot of different places. White Sox 4. Let's see, as I'm going through some of the individual ownership of hitters. There's just I have some interesting one-offs. Let me just tell you that much. Oakland, can you be useful against John Gray? That's what happens is when I take certain guys off the board from a pitching perspective, oh my Lord, do I have to play some hitters on the other side that I might not want to. I mean, not that I have to in any kind of a scenario. There's a lot of ways where this works out, but the most likely way that John Gray doesn't pay off is he gets blasted. So let's go Oakland.
Can I ask you one more question though about this?
Sure.
Slate? Who are your top 3 favorite stacks?
Such a dick. The laugh ahead of it cued me in on what you were going to do, which was just be a dick. So,
yep. I mean, you could surmise that without
day ending in Y, folks.
Yep. Couldn't be happier with myself.
Well, hit the like button, everybody. I would really appreciate if you guys did that. We've worked very, very hard. Well, we've hardly worked. Let's be serious. We've hung out in a Zoom room and chatted about baseball. Like, life is pretty good. I had a lot of fun. If you had a lot of fun, hit that like button to show your appreciation. And also to make sure that I have to get a neck tattoo if Chad Kuhl throws a perfect game or a no-hitter.
Yeah.
Period.
Or he has to get the old Prince Albert if we get a 27 strikeout perfect game.
What if there's like something where they're doing the national anthem and they're lined up on the third base path and a truck comes running over all their foots and they're like, no, we can't cancel the game. It's like in Happy Gilmore. Oh, I had to hit a ball off Frankenstein's fat foot. I'm afraid he's right. Take a shot, Mr. Gilmore.
If
one of those.
Thrown, and then if a pitch is thrown, Mr. Lindquist, the bet must count according to sportsbook house wagering rules here at Stokastic.
I don't think that's how it works, but whatever.
Yeah,
you're going to give him credit for 27 strikeouts and a rainout? I think not.
All right. So, yeah, if a truck drives on the field and drives over all the players, then we'll consider to avoid that.
Oh, home runs. That's a great thing. Pujols 2 home runs, eyebrow. No, I'm not doing that. No, there's none of that that's going to happen. But he's definitely not going to hit 2 home runs either. He's in the home run derby. How silly is that?
I didn't even know that they announced he was in the home run derby. Usually, because my brother had asked me last week who was in the home run derby, and I found it strange. I couldn't figure out who it was looking online. They give so little shit about the home run derby now. There used to be a big marketing push for it where like a month in advance, they would say, these are the contestants, and they would do different, marketing promos. They would get commercials put together. This year, they're like, whatever. It's in 4 days. Here's some old dude that's going to be in the home run derby. I still don't even know.
So true.
I don't know who all the contestants are.
Yeah, I really don't care who they are. Everybody just watches it anyway, right? I didn't watch it last year, but I did.
I don't think I don't think everybody watches it. I think that's why they've made less of a deal of it.
Well, okay, that makes sense. Well, last year I definitely watched the All-Star game because I definitely gave the people the goods. Mike Zunino. We're going to run it back this next Tuesday, by the way. It's going to be awesome. I'll be fresh off the plane from Chicago. That'll be great. and we will be talking some all-star game. That'll be awesome. It'll be nice to have a little bit of a breakdown with some of the friends here at Stokastic over the weekend. Looking forward to that very, very much. But Greg, your home run dong of the day is going to be whom?
By the way, the home run derby contestants: Pete Alonso, Albert Pujols, Kyle Schwarber, Acuna, Soto, and Julio Rodriguez. That's who is in the home run derby according to this article I clicked on. My home run pick for the day is going to be, let's see, who do I want it to be? And then
see, that's the right way of putting it.
Jose Abreu.
Jose Abreu for you. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not going to go Aaron Judge. That would be bad. Kyle Schwarber. Can he be the hero Gotham deserves? You just said his name. I think that's good enough. I think he can do it for us. If not him, how about Ian Happ? We haven't talked about the Cubbies. I think Spencer Watkins is terrible at throwing baseballs. I wish the wind wasn't blowing in, but that's still a really good spot. So I'll throw him in as well. Got some Cubbies, not a lot of five-man stacks, but a couple shares in 2-mans and 3-mans, that's for sure. But guys, we have reached the end of our boarding walk. It is 7 p.m. Eastern time. Do not forget to check out, after this show, in 1 hour, a special guest appearing on the final major of the entire season, the PGA Live Before a Lock of the Open Championship. Jason Rosslin, Alex Baker, and blank. If you want to know who that's going to be, you have to tune in an hour. Definitely be looking at that over here on the Stokastic YouTube channel.
Tiger Woods, what a get for the channel.
I know, it's great. Live, he decided to stay up until 2 a.m. in Scotland. What a nice guy. But Greg, any final words for the people?
No, just like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and watch the PGA show to see Tiger Woods talk about DFS.
That is a great idea. 100 minutes until the most important pitcher outing of my entire lifetime. He's Greg. He's not married. I'm Eric. I won't be either if this goes poorly. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks, Tyler.